police car, and that's from the police department. They're going to surplus that taxi police car. Item number 4 is declaration of K9 as surplus property and authorization to donate to his handler. That item is number 4. Item number 5 is the adoption of a resolution accepting the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program grant extension for year 5. This is for the DUI enforcement officer position. So they've given an extension on that to year number 5 for that officer. Item number 6 is adoption of a resolution accepting a North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program grant for an additional DUI enforcement officer. So this grant revenue of $116,124 covers 100% of the cost of the DUI enforcement officer, the vehicle, equipment, and the expenses associated with that grant. And so that's item number 6. Item number 7 is an approval of an ordinance to close Prince Street, or a portion of Prince Street, for the Keener Boulevard Memorial Signage Unveiling Ceremony that's going to occur on May the 23rd, with a backup date of May 24th, to hold an unveiling ceremony, and the signage that we plan to put up in honor of Robert Stephen Keener. Item number 8 is an approval of amended ordinance authorizing the closing of streets and sale, possession, and consumption of alcoholic beverages during the 2024 Friday Night Live concert series. This is due to a larger stage than we have typically set up in the past, so it's taken longer to set that stage up. The area associated with it, associated with the closure, is the same as the, I think it was like March the 4th, when this initial street closure was presented before council. So the street option remains the same, and it encompasses a portion of Stowe Park, and then you also have a field option in the attachment A. And then item number 9 is a flag and banner policy regarding flags on city properties, on city flagpoles, and then downtown on the streetlight poles and power poles for the banners associated with downtown. Mayor Pro Tem, I'll turn it back over to you at this time for your question.
Thank you. Any questions about any of the consent agenda items?
Make a motion to approve consent.
Yeah. Hold that thought.
Hold that.
I just have one about the flag and banner policy. Would it have any impact on the botanical garden? There might be banners there.
At the Botanical Gardens on grounds?
On the ground?
Not city on.
No, this is particularly for all city-owned properties, and then like the downtown, Cobb Street, where there's like banners on the flagpoles and streetlight poles. So it's not anything to do with private property at all.
Okay.
And also, just to make everyone aware that Mayor Pro Tem Heffernan also included some edits to the flag banner policy that I was going to make as well.
Nothing substantive.
Great, just very nice.
Yeah, proper references or something like that. So.
I do have a question about number 8.
Sure.
Has it always included, the consumption area always included the actual playground?
Stowe Park, I had a question too. Stowe Park area.
Yeah.
That's the area that was presented, like I said, on March the 4th. I don't know if that's historical, if that's always been the areas that they have consumed alcohol, but that's what was there before.
Do we have
Do we have anybody from,
I don't know that there's a way maybe Chief can address, being able to monitor that.
Cassidy?
No, that's Cassidy.
It has included that area in the past. It doesn't have to, but since the permits have already been given, those are included for this season.
Last year they were, weren't they? Or, yeah, that's what I thought.
I can't.
Because I remember we talked about
Yeah.
this.
Well, last year it was all up on the hill, so
Right.
But they had certain events that
Yeah.
extended into the park as well.
I mean, my thought would be, since that was what was already approved, it's probably easier to just approve this, but perhaps revisit it for next season. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's caused any problem, and Lord knows, you know, a couple of years ago, I got reprimanded for having a, not in the playground area, but for being in the lower field, and told I couldn't have the beer there. So I don't think it's, you know, I hope it's not causing any problems now, but I think we can definitely revisit it for the future. Because I noticed the same thing that you all did.
I would like for us to revisit that, later down the road, just because it hasn't
Yeah,
had a problem yet.
Mhm.
That's not a reason to,
yeah.
I agree.
I think we can comfortably exclude the playground.
I think the playground area is the obvious concern. I mean, like when you do movies in the park, you know, people sometimes bring in their own, even apart from Friday Night Live. If it's in the field area, the upper field or the bank here in front of the gazebo, and then obviously in the street, but I don't know if there's a way to cordon off.
Well, and this was some of the other things that we do when we involve road closure. We try to build in a buffer with town. We do a little bit with space as well. The signage we actually put out for no alcohol past this point only encompasses South Main Street, but that can certainly be corrected in years to come.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Anything else on the consent agenda?
Just a comment, I may or may not be able to make the Kenner Boulevard Memorial signage unveiling. That's my wife's due date, so I'll be sure to pass on some comments for whoever would like to read them out.
Very good.
There we go, thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, then I will call our regular meeting to order. And for the invocation, I would call on Councilman Rumfeld. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together for this important meeting to conduct business on behalf of the city and our citizens. We ask for your guidance as we consider the matters before us tonight. And thank you for the staff and others who spent time preparing the presentations that we will hear. We also thank you for our brave men and women who serve and protect us all so that we can have meetings like this to address the interests of our town. And we certainly want to remember and ask for your healing power for Mayor Turner and his recovery from surgery, and pray for his return here with us as soon as he is able. We ask all of this in your heavenly name. Amen.
Councilman Hill. Nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We now have some recognitions and acknowledgements. I would call on Chief Falls.
Mayor Pro Tem Council, thank you for your time. We had 2 additional PSLI, Public Safety Leadership Institute graduates in Huntersville. So I'd like to bring both of them up and introduce them one at a time. The first one is Sam Dunlap. Sam graduated Belmont Abbey College with a bachelor's degree in 2016 in business management. He was actually before he came to us, he's well educated. He has an intermediate law enforcement certificate. He's a father of 2 and a grandfather of 1. And he resides in Gastonia, and he just recently attended the PSLI and graduated at class 24. So congratulations, Sam. The next PSLI graduate is Detective Chad Romney. Chad Romney actually retired from the Secret Service as a fraud investigator, amongst many other things he did in the Secret Service. And he's married. He has 2 lovely daughters. Says his hobbies is going to the beach and playing golf. He lives in Gastonia. He's been a police officer for 29 years. He worked at Gastonia Police Department in the beginning of his career. And then he went to the Secret Service, and then once he retired, he came to work for us. We're very fortunate to have him. I actually worked with him when I was a Gastonia police officer on some fraud cases and counterfeit and things like that. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. He's on the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, Blackno, Georgia, probably didn't get that right, sorry. United States Secret Service Training Center. He's actually an ABC enforcement officer. And he's been here part-time a little longer than he has been full-time, for a year and a half. He has several achievements. He has the United States Secret Service Medal of Valor in 2002, International Association of Financial Crime Investigator, Officer of the Year, Coalition of Law Enforcement and Retail Investigator, Officer of the Year, United States Secret Service Director Life Saving Award. He has his Advanced Law Enforcement Certificate. His Advanced Law Enforcement Certificate is the highest prestigious thing that we can earn in our careers as, like say you're like a master police officer. So that, it takes a lot of training and a lot of certifications to acquire that. So when you reach that, you're like a master police officer level. And he's actually a Belmont Police Officer of the Month in January of 2024. And he also is a graduate of Class of 21 for PSI, so congratulations. So next I want to bring up Michael Spizzo. He's one of our new hires. Michael Spizzo comes from Ranlow. He's got 10 years in law enforcement. He graduated from Burns High School in 2008, joined the Marine Corps in 2008, and served until 2012. He served one tour in Afghanistan and received numerous awards and meritorious service. Attended BLET in 2012. He was a sergeant in Ranlow in 2020. He has several certifications. He started with us in November of 2023, and he's married with 2 children, a son and a daughter. He resides in Gastonia. Would like to welcome him aboard as a new police officer here. Come back when he's not dressed like me, so as soon as it comes back, we'll have him out there. Next is Jonathan Fulbright. Jonathan Fulbright comes to us from Lowell PD. He attended basic law enforcement training in 2014. He has 9 years of sworn law enforcement. He did work at Cramerton PD, went to Lowell, and then he's come to us. He was a patrol sergeant at Lowell for 2 years, and he started with us in April of this year. And he also has several certifications, married with 1 daughter, and resides in Dallas, and we're glad to have him here with us now. And last, I have Alex Geisinger. He graduated from Richlands High School in 2019. He attended BLET at Cleveland Community College in 2022. He came to us from Kings Mountain PD, where he served for 2.5 years. He started on April the 2nd of this year. Just recently got him sworn in. He's also certified in several different things. And he's soon to be father of his first child, so congratulations on that. And he also resides in Gastonia, and we're glad to have him. One more person, I'll be fully staffed. So I'm looking forward to that when it's finished. But that's all I have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chief. We also are going to recognize several IT interns, and for that, I would call forth Yvette Broussard.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having us, Mayor Pro Tem. I do have two interns from Highland School of Technology. I want to introduce and take a moment to extend my heartfelt appreciation and congratulations to our following interns from Highland School of Technology, Mr. Jason Lee. Jason Lee is the High School of Technology valedictorian. So he came to us February 20th, along with Jet Nicholson. And I'm just going to say a little bit of what they did as far as interns here. We got Jason. Jason is indecisive right now. He's deciding whether he wants to go to Chapel Hill or if he wants to go to NC State.
Is that a question?
And I think,
How about none of the above?
I was going to say a little like they don't have any kids or married or anything like that. All right, throughout their internship, they dedicated about 40 hours from February 20th through May 3rd to complete the workstation laptop project refresh. They went above and beyond, surpassing the minimum requirements with hard work and determination. Their efforts have made a significant impact, saving the city of Belmont approximately about $5,000 through data management and laptop formatting. It is truly inspiring to witness their growth and development throughout their experience. Not only have they gained valuable skills and knowledge, but the interns demonstrated a remarkable willingness to learn. And they also allowed me to mentor them. So, once again, congratulations, guys. I wish them the best in future endeavors, hopefully Chapel Hill, but hey, it's whatever. And I'm confident that they'll continue to excel in whatever path they choose. Thank you. I have some stuff here. Some certificates of appreciation. So, Jason. Oh, and there. Okay. And then we also got some tumblers so you guys can put your coffee, right?
Great job, John.
All right, well, thank you. Congratulations to our PSLI graduates, our new officers, and our IT interns. At this time, I would entertain a motion to set the agenda.
I'll make a motion for the agenda.
I'll second.
All right, Jason made the motion, Alex seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is set. Now, Councilman Rumfeld, I will entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Jason, seconded by Alex. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The consent agenda is approved. That leads us to public comment. We have one individual signed up for public comment, a veteran of public comment, so I won't need to tell you, Mr. Burns, all the different rules. I see you're wearing an Appalachian State shirt.
I had to represent tonight.
Yes.
This is my last meeting with you folks.
Well, I was just at an Appalachian State baseball game last week where they lost to Wake Forest. One. But we will recognize Brian Burns. As you know, you have 3 minutes. State your name, address, and off you go.
Brian Burns, 240 Elkhorn Park Avenue. Good evening. Greetings from the Belmont ABC board. Just wanted to present our next distribution of $42,872.25 to the city. This represents our third quarter. Just a little history on what we've done so far. This check represents distribution total. So we're revised our budget up a little bit for expect around 5 here. So that's our goal. Currently we have 27 customers, which is a pretty they're good. We have I know Leland touched on it a little bit with his on his interview. We are still in the process of speaking with people in the Harris Teeter area about expanding. Jim talked a year ago. I never thought it would take this long.
Welcome to government.
Just to be honest. But we are still those lines. touched on this last time. You know, owning property was the recommendation of our consultants, and we know that's not possible in that area. So, so obviously we're looking towards leasing, building, student, et cetera. So, judging by what Cramerton does and their kind of satellite stores, I would expect sales between $2 to $2.5 million at least in that area, just with all the growth in the houses. People that we would catch to that turn left, come past here and then turn left again, don't usually make it down there on a daily basis. So, some other information that Bill, our store manager, provided. We are the #1 store in Gaston County for sales. So that says a lot about the store and how we run it. And we're still right around, like for a single store, we are still in the 4, 5, 6 in the state at our sales level. So this is really been a great venture that the city and the citizens have entered into. So, and just finally, closing out for me, you know, we have really good management. We have a really good board, and we work well together. And you know, it's been my honor to lead that board for the last 2 years. And as much as I hate to leave, the General Assembly says I have to. So with that, I would like to reintroduce to you Tim Summers. I know you approved him earlier. Tim, would you like to stand up? So we don't place a name with the face. So the next one bringing a check will be him. Tim has been kind of spearheading the expansion anyway, so he's been our point person with the consultants. And Tim, you're in good hands with him, you really are. His food experience has been great, his beverage experience. He brings to the table the trends, what are trending. He does it in the store lately, the ready-to-drink stuff. I mean, that was Tim and Bill were on that like crazy. Bill, you want to stand up? As many of you know, Bill's our manager of the store. That was, you know, that was us looking at trends and having the right people in place and making sure that we're meeting the needs of our customers. So, with that, again, thank you again for the opportunity to serve. It's been a wonderful experience for me. And with that, I will hand this over to Miles, and thank you again.
Thank you for your
Thank
leadership.
you. I do just want to thank Brian on behalf of council. You've done a great job. The ABC board has you know, just done phenomenally. You know, it's very well run. I went to one of your meetings a long time ago, and it just was impressed. And you know what they've accomplished, the numbers that Brian gave speak for themselves. And so, you know, job well done. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. I appreciate those words, and you know, we wouldn't be able to do it, I think, without a good partnership with City Council. So, I mean, I think we work well together.
And if you can locate that second store there at the Harris Teeter, it'll catch some of that South Carolina traffic and bring some of that money back into gas.
That was the point. I mean, you know, why not? I mean,
Right.
They're turning left. Let's catch them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, and then just to clarify, one of the reasons we started a little bit late, we were doing some interviews for board positions in a special meeting, and as Brian mentioned, we did approve his successor as chair of the ABC board as part of that meeting, Tim Summers. So we look forward to working with Tim as well and to continue the great legacy of the ABC board so far. All right, moving on, next on the agenda is a public hearing on a petition requesting non-contiguous annexation for Lakeview Farms. I'll have the city manager introduce it. We are going to open the public hearing and then continue it to a later date. So, Miles?
Yes, this is a public hearing on petition requesting non-contiguous annexation for Lakeview Farms. I think Tiffany is probably going to come up and go through this process with us, give us a little bit of background, and then staff's perspective, and then the petitioner, and I think at the very end we'll have a public comment.
All right, so I will, at this time, entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
Motion to go into public hearing.
Motion made by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All those in favor? Aye. We are now in public hearing. Tiffany.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. This item is being requested by notified staff or you and your continuance of this item so that we can sync up the schedules of this decision with the pending development application that's currently under review and scheduled for planning board consideration on May 16th. Subsequently, that project proposal would come to you for consideration. Presumably, if a recommendation is rendered at the May 16th, that would be scheduled for your next meeting, which would be June 3rd. And so we respectfully ask for you to continue this public hearing to allow both items to be heard simultaneously, or at least within the same meeting. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those at this time, but the request is simply to continue.
Any questions for Tiffany?
I'll delay my questions until later into the agenda. That's easy.
Okay, all right. If there are no questions, I believe the appropriate motion would be to continue this until, this public hearing until the regular meeting on June 3rd.
And again, just, this isn't approving it, this is just kind of continuing it for the process itself. But I'll make the motion to continue to June 3rd, the public hearing to June 3rd.
Motion made by Alex, seconded by Jason. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the public hearing is continued. Our next item, C3, is a public hearing for ZA 2022.03A, Complete Kids at Belmont Middle School. Now, this item was treated the exact same as we just treated the Lakeview Farms annexation. We opened the public hearing back in February, I think, and have continued it several times until today. So I don't believe we need to make any further motion. We are in public hearing already, and so with that said, I would recognize Jamie Lisi to give the presentation on behalf of staff.
Thank you. This is zoning map amendment. Zoning map amendment 2022.03A.
I'm sorry, can you all hear? Okay, can you perhaps get closer to the mic? I'm sorry.
How's that? Is that better?
Bring it up.
Okay. First time doing this.
That's okay. We don't mind.
Okay. All right. So this is a request. Is that better? Better. Okay. To amend the conditional zoning to allow for occupancy of the third floor of office space for Care Partners LLC. Subject parcel ID number 309504, is on a .92 acre lot behind the former Belmont Middle School. Little background, as part of the original rezoning, this parcel was subdivided to allow for activation of this building, while the applicant creates a master plan for the whole site. So Complete Kids offers therapy for children with autism and other diverse learning abilities. Complete Kids parent company, Care Partners LLC, filed this amendment to activate additional office space on the third floor. So Complete Kids met all the conditions of the original rezoning, including securing a shared parking agreement with First Baptist Church, and they installed a brick screening wall around the main parking lot. Okay, so this is their current parking agreement. The pink shape at the bottom is the 38 parking spaces on First Baptist Church campus. The green rectangle represents 21 parking spaces on Central Avenue. The yellow rectangle represents 25 spaces in the main lot where the student pickup and drop-off is located. And the blue rectangle is 18 parking spaces on Hill Street. So they already have 102 spots secured. So the orange rectangles here represent parking spaces added to the shared parking agreement with First Baptist Church. All the parking spaces on First Baptist Church site are designated for employee parking, which reserve those closest spaces for families and students. And just as a side note, they only require 117 spaces. With these additional spaces, they have a total of 189 parking spaces. So the 15 additional spaces that are required to activate the third floor for a total of 117 parking spaces. The shared parking agreement with First Baptist Church, as well as the existing parking, totals 189 total parking spaces. The applicant is asking for relief in the distance from these parking spaces to the building for the additional parking spaces. There were 2 public meetings held by the applicant. The first was Thursday, January 4th. It was an in-person meeting, 5 people in attendance, and the questions were concerning parking, current and future, and the long-range vision for the school facility. They had a virtual meeting on Friday, January 5th with no attendees. The planning board, after discussion, the planning board motion to amend the agreement did not pass by a vote of 3 to 4. Concerns that the planning board had were long-term nature of the parking agreement and the distance relief needed for the additional spaces. Staff worked with the applicant and refined conditions to address the planning board's concerns. So we are asking council to determine if this is rezoning amendment is comprehensive, is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and in the public interest. And for the council to receive the staff report, public comment, and planning and zoning board recommendation, render a decision, approve as presented, or approve as modified, or disapproved. And 2 findings are required. The map amendment is a reasonable request and in the public interest. And the map amendment is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive land use plan. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for Jamie?
Wasn't there a slide where you noted the number of spaces that they would actually need on an average daily basis? Is that?
The parking spaces that are required by the LDC? This is the one.
No, the ones that they would actually require for their operation, complete kids, like once if it were fully activated, the third floor.
That 717 spaces is the amount that is
Required, okay.
required. So that is all of these spaces are on this map,
Yeah,
including these orange.
right. But the shared parking agreement actually also includes the lot there on the corner of Central and Myrtle as well, right?
That's correct. That is under the agreement that is in place now.
That's the other 87.
Or that's the other, I think, 40, because the 87 is the one in the red.
The red, yeah.
And the other one is like, I think, 45. It's 38, but it can be up to 46 maybe, or something like that.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And what's the stipulation on when you have shared parking agreements between businesses? I think we ran into this with the Chronicle, with that new surface lot that we're considering, where it had to be within 300 feet of the front door, basically, to be considered for shared parking. Operation as well.
That is correct.
300 feet.
Right, well, it's public spaces within 300 feet, when it's a shared use parking agreement, that's still the general consensus that that's the amount of space typically. However, what's specifically outlined with the distance is that distance for public parking spaces, which is not necessarily the same standard for the shared use. Let me pull up the ordinance and circle back on what the shared use section says, but that's what I'm referring.
Is it 300 feet from the front door?
That was my understanding.
Okay. So this complete kids on the backside.
So that's, yeah.
Right, but we're not counting the front door to the middle school,
Right.
right?
So she's got to look at what the shared use stipulation is for distance.
It is from the corner of the parcel to the corner of the parking lot. It's 315 feet.
From the
But you know that.
corner of the front main building?
The front where, like right where it says Myrtle, right where that R is. From that
Okay.
corner to the other corner,
I see.
the
And that's
existing.
315?
All right, which will be a little bit further than for the complete kids, because that's now a separate parcel.
That's correct. So if it would have been on the entire parcel, it would have been just, across the street, which of course is not less than 300 feet.
So I think we had, Jason had asked what the code says about the distance to the shared parking space, and the planning director, Tiffany, looked it up, and so she's going to answer that question now.
Sure, so just a little bit of history. When this project was originally considered for conditional zoning, remember at the time that it was a portion of what was one parcel altogether. And so the request for shared use parking was when the entirety of the parcel was in fact adjacent to the church. So I just wanted to provide that as a little bit of background. So our shared use parking agreements read that the joint use of shared off-street parking between two uses may be made by contract between two or more adjacent property owners. And then it doesn't specifically outline that 300 feet. But again, that's what we've kind of used as a guidance point. The 300 feet is specific to public parking. And then, so you guys had previously, as city council, authorized relief of the fact that those were actually technically no longer going to be adjacent once that parcel was carved out in the rear. But there was some benefit in making sure there was more certainty when a master plan did come forth for the entirety of the Belmont Middle School property by making sure that the conditional zoning was limited to just that rear parcel. And so in exchange for that, the conditional zoning is just on the piece that's currently proposed for amendment. There will still be a requirement to have a future master plan for both parcels, but that shared use parking agreement was allowable as part of the original conditions based on it being an adjacent site at the time to the church. So what they're asking right now is to extend that shared use parking agreement that's already in place and allow for them to count the additional spaces as agreed upon by the church to count towards use for this project.
And just to confirm, you said by our kind of standards, it was 300 feet. What is the distance to their door? 315, so we're talking about a delta of 15 feet.
No, that's the corner of the parcel.
The corner of the parcel.
That's to the corner of the parcel, but it is not 300 feet because it's not a public law.
Yeah.
It's,
Right, but you
it's
said
not
it's
in there, it's just a standard practice of
Right.
close proximity for walkability.
Right.
Just want to make sure we're consistent.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just for point of clarification, the entrance is there. Can you point out that their actual entrance on the map, where the door is? Because it's off to the side.
Is it off of
Yeah,
Mill
I mean,
Street?
It's not off to the very back, it's off to the side, right there. And you've got a sidewalk that just goes straight across right over there to it, just to kind of make that clarification. But also, again, I just want to kind of remind everybody, just, again, some for the new faces too, you know, there's a partnership with this group because the front part of the building has not been activated yet. And there are kind of our current discussions right now with the city and the landowner themselves to try to activate that building. And we've always known that it's going to take a collective effort to be able to get this done. So again, I just wanted to enter those comments into the record as well.
Any other questions?
The applicant does have a representative here.
Okay. Well, just a minute. I think I might have a question. But, so I'm understanding correctly, so when they came to us originally back in 2022, they had the whole building, the whole site, what we constitute the old middle school proper, plus the rear building, which is where they want to have their offices. As part of that rezoning, they carved out the rear building to use as their office, but they only carved out the first 2 floors to use for office and therapy. And so they had 2 floors, separate parcel, and they had sufficient parking spaces per the formula of the land development, right?
They asked for the relief in that 300 feet then as well. And
Yeah, and they were given it. Now they want to activate the 3rd floor. So because they're activating the 3rd floor, there's going to be more employees there. I think it goes from 46 to 80, is that correct?
That's
something like that. And because there's more square feet, that changes the calculation of how many parking spaces they need. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if you count what's in that, I guess it's like screened now, the parking right there, plus the parking on Hill Street, plus the parking out front, plus the parking from the original shared use agreement, they come to 102, which is slightly less than 117. What they're proposing is to, and they've got the agreement from the church in the agenda packet. They want to add what's in the orange or red there, which would be 87 more spaces, which gets them up to 189, and that would be more than sufficient to satisfy the parking requirement.
That's correct.
And so the issue then is, they don't need to, they don't need relief from the parking agreement per se, but they apparently are asking for additional relief from the distance. That seems to be what the slides were saying. But there is no real requirement in the code, since this isn't a public parking lot, but the general rule of thumb is the same. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I believe the planning board had, one of their concerns is with the distance, and I fully agree with what Councilman Zook said about the partnership, and I think we all, anyone who worked in Charlotte probably parks a lot further away from the building that I certainly did when I worked in Charlotte, and walked, up to 10 minutes yes. But I think there was also some concern by the planning board about what would happen to the shared parking, like what if the church says we don't want to do it anymore? And I believe that is also addressed in the conditions, so can you provide some insight on that?
Sure, thank you for that question. So as you may see in your staff report, there's the proposed conditions for this project are presented with two color edits, red being what staff had originally proposed to planning board, and the blue is what modifications are proposed following the meeting with planning board to hopefully better address some of the concerns presented that evening. And so that, just to make sure that I start on the right part, specifically with condition number 9, so a rewrite of that language to instead read all required parking for this parcel, specifically parcel ID number 309504, shall be included in the master plan for the entire Belmont Middle School campus, which includes PID 309504 as well as PID 309503, instead of utilizing shared use parking agreements to fulfill the parking requirements. So we know that some of the required spaces are currently being met through shared use parking agreements off-site. It would be through this condition, the expectation that those spaces that are currently within those shared use parking agreements would somehow be housed throughout and incorporated into the overall master plan when the main Belmont Middle School campus is redeveloped. And that we would then have further information of how that entire parking package is proposed.
So then, right, so they can't just rely on this.
Forever, correct. It offers some termination to that and allows us to have more information with the full master plan.
And at the time of the planning board meeting, we did not have the written approval signed by the church, is that correct? And that came after the written acknowledgement of the shared parking?
It was January this year.
I believe they had it, but it
Okay.
just didn't get uploaded as an exhibit, but it was in place.
And if for some reason those agreements fell through before the rest of the site was activated, obviously they'd be out of compliance and they'd have to come try and figure out an alternative path to the required parking spaces.
That is correct, and if there was any parking that was in any areas that should not be included for parking and, related to this use, we would work with Lindsay Yeager as well on those issues as they arise.
And so you believe that the concerns expressed by the planning board have been addressed by these changed conditions?
That is staff's opinion, but we welcome any feedback from city council prior to decision being made.
Thank you.
Just to confirm, this was reviewed and addressed with the applicant themselves, the adjustments that you guys are talking about just now?
That is my understanding. Jamie's been working directly with the applicants and they are aware of tonight, but again, we do have the applicant representative here, so we can confirm.
That might be a good segue. Does anyone else have any?
Well, I'm just kind of thinking forward, so the parking requirements that are required for this applicant, the kids, again, as you look at the overall master plan for the site, we have enough flexibility and latitude built into these agreements that when the rest of the site's activated, there's not gonna be a conflict there with the parking requirements for whatever goes into the rest of the site, being duly counted, you know what I mean?
It would have to be considered as part of a holistic solution. So there may be give and takes throughout that process, but a master plan would need to address both the parking need for this use as well as any subsequent use on the adjacent parcel.
Anything else? Oh, let's hear from the applicant then.
Forgive me, my CEO is out of the country, so unfortunately you're stuck with me, so I apologize.
And you are?
I am Bob Fremgen, I'm the VP of Marketing from Complete Kids.
Great. So, I mean, generally, I mean, if you have anything, remarks you'd like to make, or you can answer any questions that come.
I'm happy, I don't know if there's any marks, it seemed like it was covered pretty well. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that the red area would be employees only, we would never ask parents and kids to, traverse North Central Avenue.
And, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's an important one.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask that, just to confirm, and Jim might have been going there, have you guys reviewed what Tiffany, our planning director, was stating? And
Yes.
You guys?
Well, my CEO does, and he will be up to speak.
And you guys agree with, okay, okay.
Yeah, and there's no conflict, I believe, in terms of the shared parking agreement with the church, because they need the parking lot, as I understand it, Wednesday night starting at 6 and all day Sunday, and you all are what, 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think this, sometimes we do Saturday, but I don't believe this facility on Saturday.
And most of the parking, or in terms of the patients, that's all pick up and drop off, is that correct? That the parents will not stay with their children. during the
90% of
therapy.
them pick up and drop off. We do have a small section of parents kids that come for things like speech, where it's only a half hour, and some of them, not all, but some will park in the parking lot. But 90% of our parents pick up in the morning and then come back later.
So basically how it functioned when it was an operating.
Basically, exact same
Yeah.
thing.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, unless there's any further discussion, I think or is there anything else from the staff?
We're just changing the slides.
Okay.
Charlie, did you have something? Does that church have a daycare now? Like a during the day daycare?
There's a small thing.
Anything else? I'd entertain a motion to come out of public hearing.
Motion to come out of public hearing.
Made by Alex, second by Catherine, all in favor? All right, we're out of public hearing, and that brings us to item C4. Consider approval of an ordinance for ZA 2022.03A, Complete Kids, a request to update the conditional zoning on a portion of the former Belmont Middle School in order to expand professional office use. There is, I think, in front of you, a slightly revised ordinance with the correction was minimal but necessary in terms of who the applicant was. It originally stated Gaston County Board of Education and Care Partners, and obviously this is just Care Partners. So that's the ordinance that we'd be voting on. Would I? Yes.
I'll make the motion to approve based off of the adjusted ordinance that we have here.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Seconded by Jason. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, it passes. Now, we do have another motion that needs to be made. Councilman Hill, would you like to make an additional motion?
I can read your handwriting.
Oh,
I move to find this amendment reasonable request in the public interest because it proposes adaptive reuse of a portion of a historic property, thus serves as a good transitional use within the community and is consistent with the goals of the adopted comprehensive land use plan and other adopted plans in land use, economy, and community character.
Second.
all right, motion by Charlie, seconded by Alex. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Hold on.
Thank you, Jamie.
Moving right along now into the meat of the regular agenda, we have C5, Peninsula Sewer Capacity Study Findings, presentation by Withers Ravenel. Miles, you want to introduce the item?
Well, this is Jonathan Wilson, the Public Works Director, and he's going to introduce the Withers Ravenel team.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So with us tonight is Chris Rosenboom from Withers Ravenel, and he is going to cover the South Peninsula Sewer Study for the City of Allen.
Okay. I'm Chris Rosenboom, as Jonathan introduced. Also with us is Allison Alexander, our client experience manager, who's been assisting in this project. Real quick description of the study area. We're looking at the South Point Peninsula, the wastewater collection system, and focusing on the capacity, right? We know the development's been aggressive in that area, and looking and seeing kind of where we are from a wastewater collection standpoint. I'll be talking about the process we went through, kind of steps we take to do the analysis, and then finish up the findings. In the study area, South Point Wastewater Collection System. It is the area that's on the next slide, south of the marked location. That marked location is actually Henry Chapel Road. And on the next slide, the map, all the stations that we looked at are shown on the map. I will point out we didn't go as granular as looking at all the minor collectors, the gravity, the minor gravity that feeds these lift stations. This kind of lift stations, the force mains, and the primary conveyance north. That map is shown here. Again, study focused on the primary collector pump stations and force mains. The primary collector being the 8-inch force main that runs along South Point Road. And a little point of clarification on this map, the Bellmead and Greystone pump stations actually do not discharge directly to the 8, to the purple line. They have a separate line. So really the focus is the area to the south and the primary 8 heading north up toward the city wastewater treatment plant. Information that we collected to perform the study. All the pump station drawdown results that the city had from 2023. They go out every month, and they do what's called drawdown testing. Basically, take a timing of how long it takes to draw down a pump station, and then that calculated into a pumping rate. The city's available GIS information. We actually performed another drawdown test ourselves with the city staff in March 2024, and also available record drawings. The figure to the right illustrates that 5 stations actually flow into a single station, being the Morgan's Branch pump station, making Morgan's Branch what we refer to as a master pump station. And that repumps the majority of the flow from the South Point area north to the treatment plant. This was kind of a 2-phase study. The first study, a little more high level, indicated that additional analysis of the Morgan's Branch pump station and its force main were warranted. And that's the cloud area shown in the figure to the right. Part of our study was to meter wastewater flows and also parallel rain gauge metering. Metering helps us establish your current flows. Comparing to the rain gauges allows us to see how the system reacts and helps us measure what we refer to as inflow and infiltration, or I&I. Helps us to estimate what a normal flow would be versus what happens when it's storming. And then the reason for the metering is the estimation of the weather-induced inflow and infiltration. We apply that to what we refer to as design storms. We have a 2-year, a 5-year, and a 10-year design storm that are kind of design criteria for these types of analysis. And those design storms are kind of defined by the Natural Resources Conservation Service. We also look at pump run times, with the drawdown information that we discussed. We know about what the pumps are putting out. If we also know how often a day they're running, we can kind of back calculate into a total flow per day. And again, assuming no flow is lost, no sanitary sewer overflows, flow in has to equal flow out, so we estimate flow into each station using pump run times as well. And then this value is compared to the flow metering as a means of validation and comparison. In developing a hydraulic model of the system shown to the right, we estimated from flow metering that the Morgan's Branch pump station was seeing about 75 gallons a minute right now in South Ridge 31. We estimated from the pump runtime analysis that number is up to 111. There's a couple different reasons for a different value between metering and run times. That could just be the slight variations in pump performance on a daily basis, and also variations in runtime data that's collected at the station and how granular that is. We also accounted for future development, the list shown. So kind of getting into the findings, the first page we have, we looked at current flows based on flow metering, and we use the INI information that we learned from our metering, and we applied these future design storms, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year design storms that we discussed. The results of that analysis show no overflows for either station under a 2- and 5-year design storm, but we do show an overflow at Morgan's Branch under a 10-year design storm. They're basically saying that it can't quite keep up under a high ionized slug. That would be like a 10-year design storm. 10-year design storm would be something probably like a tropical storm in nature. 5-year, but we do have the same SSO at Morgan's Branch, a little higher volume under a 10-year storm. And then we start applying those future flows that we talked about a few slides ago. Some of the subdivisions we know are coming on the books. And then we do start seeing some model SSOs under 2, 5, and 10 year. So again, the more flow going to the station, the problem starts to grow a little bit. And the takeaway, kind of go through these. Modeling shows that the Morgan's Branch pump station is a potential SSO condition during a 10-year design storm under current flow. Modeling shows that Morgan's Branch pump station is a potential SSO location during the 2, 5, and 10-year design storms with future flows. Upsizing the pump station, unfortunately, isn't quite as simple as just upgrading the pump station. If you increase the pump station capacity, or you're putting bigger pumps in, you limit what the 8-inch force main can do. Typically, we only velocities in a force main should stay at 7.5 feet per second. That's kind of our guide to making sure we know if force main is under capacity or not. So, if you upgrade the Morgan's Branch higher flow, you got to do something with the force main as well. And recommended future evaluation of options for the upgrades that we talked about, which we need to accommodate the future flow allocations that are coming, and also to help identify potential funding sources for the work.
Back up a
Yeah,
couple slides to the future development, that one.
While they're doing that, I had a quick question for you. So here we see at current, we're at the 10 years. So a 10-year storm, you're saying it's like something like a tropical storm. We're going to start seeing probably, some leakage, I guess you could say, from that lift station.
Yeah, it could be a potential loss of flow just because pumps can't keep up during the flood.
Okay, so what is like the standard? I always look for this stuff. What is the benchmark? Like, where do you necessarily want to be? and then I'll kind of segue into this. So we're at a 10-year currently, which is even kind of a bad word to use because you technically have developments that have been approved prior to this council, I think prior to anyone sitting on this council, that are in the pipeline that are going to trigger this future flow. But what is the benchmark? Where do we generally want to be?
I would say shooting for like a 25 or 50-year storm and then be able to design around it. I don't think it makes sense under many circumstances to design for a 100-year storm. Because I think you'd have oversized infrastructure everywhere for something that almost never happens. So typically we would look at a 25 or a 50-year.
When you say 25 or 50-year, and I'm only saying this for the people that are watching, can you put that in layman terms for our citizens?
That is the probability that a given storm is going to happen. So you say, 25-year storm, probability would happen once every 25 years on average.
And then,
Because of the level.
so just so we're also kind of clear, the recommendations is to upgrade the 8-inch line that is down South Point Road, along with upgrading the lift station, the pump station that's down in Morgan's Branch. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. Yes.
And do we have an estimated cost associated with that?
Well, before you get there, my understanding was replacing, not just upgrading, but replacing the lift station and Morgan Branch and running a parallel line to the 8 inches.
So we would look at options. So I think the option of upgrading the pump station that's there is possible.
Okay.
That is, it's not, there's no condition, that we saw that would warrant, full replacement as long as we can get enough volume in the wet wells, et cetera. But we certainly can replace pumps and do it that way. And then we'd have multiple options in terms of force main. We could look at paralleling, so you add an 8 to an 8, which essentially gives you a 12, or you replace it with a single line.
Adding an 8 to an 8 gives you a 12,
It does.
basically the equivalent of 12.
Yes, it does.
So kind of to the cost estimates, do we have a cost estimate associated with kind of what needs to be done?
High level, we have not prepared a cost estimate, a formal high level. We're looking at in the 10 to 12 million range.
In today's dollar. In today's dollar.
It is.
So in that 10 to 12 million range, and then I guess that, again, we would look at the options, right? Whether you add the additional line, repair the existing, what have you.
That's correct.
Where does that then get us to? Does that get us to the 25-year storm mark, or does that get us, where would that put us? I guess?
That would take care of your storm situations, for the foreseeable future.
And then,
Inclusive of all those future developments.
Yes.
say that again?
Inclusive of all those future developments.
Okay, so that does include all the.
Yes.
Okay. And then, again, not to capitalize on here, but how long does this process generally take? So we've identified there's an issue, there's a problem. Let's say, we say we gotta do this $10 to $12 million. What is the process and the timeline for that individual process? Generally.
I would say design, construction, probably a couple years. Now, some of that depends on if you're able to identify funding sources. Sometimes funding sources have timelines associated with them, and that more sets your duration, but, all things being equal, a couple of years for design construction at least.
Okay.
It's a couple of years to get shovels in the ground, or
Start to finish.
start to finish?
No, start to finish.
Okay.
So, again, I just got two more things and I'm done, guys, I can go all at it. But I said that I wanted to reserve some of my comments or questions in regards to Lakeview Farms. I think it's pretty evident and clear in regards to the information tonight that there's gonna need to be some type of adjustments to negotiations if they're willing to help or pitch in. This is more for council. But I would also like to see if any of the other council members would be interested in this and directing staff to looking into a building moratorium for the peninsula, particularly anything that would be impacted or pulled from the sewage line down South Point Road. We're talking about a couple of years, and with what we've already got approved, we're looking at that, we're already gonna start looking at some type of critical, I would assume it's gonna call it critical at that pump station.
Yes, every 2 years, we do a plan instead of looking at worse situations. Obviously, we want to go make the goal to not have any SSOs, not have any sewer overflow. Somebody wants those. I guess the criticality, it depends on the rest of the system. How's the rest of the system doing? Do you have SSO also elsewhere that are more critical than every 2 years. That's the kind of questions that staff would look at.
And that's what I direct, ask staff to look into, but again, like parallel to potentially legally what a moratorium would look at. And final thing, I did want to comment, because Richard is not here, but I did want to also establish that Richard brought this up 4 to 5 years ago, that we needed to do a sewer capacity study. When I got elected 2.5 years ago, we said, hey, we need to do a sewer capacity study. Each time we asked to do that, we were always assured at that time, which no one at that time is here anymore, that we were completely fine, everything was going to be okay. We basically had no clue what we were talking about. So Miles, I would like to appreciate you and call you out and say thank you for getting the ball running on this, because as soon as Miles was hired, he started to hit the ground running on this. But this has been called out for many years before us, and a lot of these developments that are causing this were developments that weren't even approved by this council, anyone on this council, including Jim. I don't know which ones or what Richard would have voted for back then, but I did just kind of want to call that out, because this is one of those kind of nerve, kind of pissed off moments for me. So again, I'll shut up and give you all the floor on this one. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I definitely want to visit mixing housing down the peninsula moving forward. What's the verbiage? Yeah, I definitely want to revisit that. I think it's a fantastic idea, Alex, and I think it's necessary. Again, thank you for taking this and, he's been here for how long? 2 years? Yeah.
Almost a year.
Almost a year.
Oh, a year, and we have this taken care of, and this is
Well.
it's not taken care of, but at least we know what we're dealing with now, and this should have been addressed, how many years ago, Alex?
The 4.5 to 5 years ago.
So we're kind of left with a big issue, but I appreciate you bringing this to light, and I'm sorry that, it's in our hands, but at least it's in good hands, so hopefully we can take care of it, but it's disappointing to say the least. Troubling for sure.
I don't know that the discussion of the moratorium is something we would have tonight necessarily, but.
Well, I think, I think the city manager can clarify, but I think he's looking for some, we're not going to make any decisions tonight, but I think he's looking for some direction about, what we want to do with this information.
And just to be clear, the request that I would like to make for staff is to look at the legalities of this as well and the full prong approach. And again, we have existing developments that are approved, right?
Yes.
That are already going to get us over the mark for the lift station or pump station down there. So I would be curious to see what can we do, because I don't think we know that answer yet from a legal perspective. But again, a couple of years just to get this in the ground, and we're breaking ground over at, what's that one called over there near Danielsville Botanical Gardens? Worrells River. They've already cleared land. They're going to start breaking ground. McLean has started already going vertical on their townhomes over there. So again, we're talking about an existing issue that is going to be dead ahead of us in a couple of, if not as big years. Yeah.
I think,
It's already here. This is not sustainable.
no, I think there's a large contingent of folks, especially on the peninsula, where a lot of us live, that, would be in favor of a moratorium. That obviously addresses, what happens from here going forward. When you look at all these developments that have been approved already, I don't know that we have a choice but to look at some creative ways to fund these type of infrastructure improvements. We've got to have it, based on what's already been approved. What we do going forward with the moratorium, to me, is a separate issue. I think it needs to be addressed, but.
And I would like to say, we shouldn't leave the option of partnership on the table again to see cost sharing and stuff like that, because again, this is going to be an expensive project. If this isn't today's dollars, you're going to get up to what, like $16 million potentially by the time the bill comes to be called.
Think of how long it takes for us to go through the design process, the permitting process, all the due diligence that we have to do with, if we have to run a parallel line, we have the easements in place currently to run a new line. We need to get construction easements, so that takes a lot of time to get to that point. So I couldn't say this would be a 2-year or 3-year, if we can fast track it in any way, that's really what we want to do.
Is there an obvious option that we can start trying to start there and then maybe work our way back?
Well, for me, not yet. What I'd like for us to do is, I know that we've got, before I start, though, I want to say that it's not not just me that takes all the credit for capacity study. We've got an assistant city manager, multiple staff that have kind of, I walked into it, and they were well on their way to get this study completed, so I can't take all the credit. I just want to say that up front. I don't want to take the credit, really, because we've got great staff. I'm just the one that sits here and you pass that to me, and I can pass that to them. But what I would like to do is, we have the $10 million that the state granted us last year. You all went through that process to rank the projects that we considered for the CIP. I'd like to talk to staff and probably bring that list back to you all with maybe an updated ranking to say, I imagine that we probably need to start pretty quickly on design, so I can see that the design for pump station and the force main would probably be ranked pretty high on the list right now. But we do have that $10 million that we could assign to those projects, and then look at the remainder of the $10 million to see what is the next priority, see what can kind of come off the list. So I would recommend that we would bring that back to council at the next council meeting as soon as we get it back to you all, prior to reading that CIP for water sewer. And for the moratorium, we'd like to study that a little bit more, bring that back as far as a full presentation on what the requirements are that the state requires for moratorium. There's certain things we have to do to get to that point, so we need to do a deep dive on it and then bring that back to a full presentation. So those are kind of the first two things I can see. I can't really speak to, is there anything we can do right off the bat to correct anything, because I think it's gonna take a little bit of time for us to get there, and I'm not ready to speak on it quite yet, but that's the two things that I can see that we would do immediately is re-rank the CIP, bring that back for potential design, because it takes just a little bit to get, an engineer under contract with us. If we knew the estimate amount, we could do that.
I would certainly recommend those two directional steps, and I'm guessing that design phase, if we were to approve that, that would tell us things like the lift station at Orange Branch, just, what are the possibilities for outfitting what we have there versus a full replacement, and the cost for that. Things like having to run a parallel lines versus replacing what's there. That would tell us all of that in the design phase, right?
Correct. Yep, so that would get us to a point to say, here's what we actually need to do, and then coming from that, you would get cost estimates. So I couldn't say whether it's 10 or 12 or whatever, that's probably a pretty accurate number. We got an engineer standing up saying that's probably what it is, but until we study it a little bit further, then we get the cost estimates. And like I said, that's today's dollar, $10 to $12 million. It probably takes a couple of years to get to the point of construction. You consider inflation every year, 5-10% for construction projects right now.
A couple of years to get to the construction phase?
I would think
You
so.
would imagine.
It depends when you start. I mean, we would get into design on a project like this, and, you kind of see what you're up against in a permitting issue, stream crossings, et cetera, if the Army Corps is involved. So there's questions like that kind of start dictating the schedule a little more.
And is it possible to come back with that? Maybe that requires a longer time frame before you can come back to us with findings, but is it possible to get those design outcomes and cost estimates in the same report, or is that a subsequent step?
You're talking about for the design estimate, the construction estimate?
Well, the design estimate, I guess the design estimate first, right?
Yeah, design estimate would have to come first, because we don't really know what the outcome may be of a design. So we couldn't really say we need to estimate it at that point, just not know when off the bat.
Because we still wouldn't really know kind of right away if there is any that would be needed and anything like that, where you have to acquire maybe private property or something like that.
The survey is part of the design. The survey tells us that.
So the moratorium, you're wanting it to potentially include the developments that have already been approved that haven't.
No, I just think we need clarification. Yeah.
They're exempt.
I would just, if I could, because I've looked at this off and on, either in talking with Parks or Richard wondering, a lot of people say you can't have a moratorium in North Carolina. It's certainly not as easy as it is in South Carolina, but it can be done. It's just there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And, this is what gives us the ability, I think, to do it.
Right.
You can't you couldn't just sit around and say, hey, I think a moratorium would be a good idea, let's put one on the agenda at the next council meeting. You have to be very specific about, well, this is why, this is the particular area where there'd be one, and this is what it will take to end it. And as soon as that happens, the moratorium ends.
I don't disagree, that's why I was asking
Yeah.
staff to look into it.
Oh, I know, I'm not saying,
We make any-
I'm just sort of giving my,
There's sort of a detailed process, but in that, it's clear in the statute that developments that have already been approved or preliminary plats that have already been filed, those projects are exempt from the moratorium.
although I will point out that on that slide, Lakeview Farms has not been approved.
Right.
Unlike those other developments, that is coming to us perhaps as early as next month, but that is different than, one of these things is not like the other, and Lakeview Farms has not been approved, whereas, many of those others have been approved long ago, 10, 15, 20 years maybe in some cases, like with Reflection Point. So that's why I do think it's good to have the city attorney look at it, because there are a lot of, I think public hearings are going to have to be had before it's done, but I think it's good to, as Richard is fond of saying, we don't know what we don't know, and we'll get guidance on that. Is there any other questions on any of these revelations?
Are we going to brief, will there be like a briefing session for the P and Z board as well? I feel like they might need to get this information in front of them sooner than later as well.
That's what I understand, is that we plan to provide this information to them in similar fashion, maybe through a memo. I think that Tiffany and Kevin have been talking about that a little bit, about how we inform planning and zoning board this time.
Okay.
I did have a question before you step away. A couple of us live in the Bellmead subdivision. And I remember your remarks earlier saying that the Bellmead and Greystone neighborhoods, they're not tied into the state line. They route, like Bellmead routes over to Greystone, I noticed on your map, and then it goes to the pump station, I believe, at the bottom of Greystone State Drive.
Yeah, so Bellmead goes to Greystone, Greystone goes up north to kind of beyond the 8-inch force main, if you will, up to the primary line that feeds the wastewater treatment plant. So it's not, it's hydraulically, it's a little bit separated from the system.
Was that part of this study, though?
Yes, it was. So we started the study to include the entire peninsula.
Okay.
And as we started looking at stations, we narrowed it down to the master.
The real problematic areas, yeah. Because I was actually just in Greystone yesterday, and I had heard this over the years, that some of the residents, like in the very bottom of like Greystone State Drive, down close to the, I think there's a station down there, right? That there is an odor in the air.
Okay, well, that's.
And I smelled it yesterday.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is real. And I know those residents see and feel and smell that, quite regularly. I think Stowe Road maybe has some similar concerns in certain areas there. So are those things that you feel like would be addressed? I mean, you said that Bellmead and Greystone are kind of excluded from.
They're kind of excluded, they're further in the system, if you will.
Okay.
So, the study that we did was really focused on flows.
Mm-hmm.
Things like odors are usually a result of wastewater that's been in the water all too long, and there's just these pumps to cycle more often.
Okay.
So it's kind of a different issue, probably.
Is that a manual adjustment we can make, or?
Probably, I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
Speak to that.
could be, operationally, you could adjust your floats, the way those stations operate. You hit your high float, it turns on, it pumps down to the low float, and it keeps doing that, so you adjust your floats, it's a little less space in between, it cycles more often.
I think that's something we probably should adjust.
Kind of piggybacking off of Jason, and I think Jason was getting here too, are we extending or expanding the scope of the study potentially to the rest of the city as well?
Yeah, that's part of the fiscal year 24-25 budget, knowing that we've never done one for the rest of the city. So we've included, I think, $200,000 in the water sewer fund to include the capacity study for everywhere else.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Miles.
And it's never been done?
Yeah, did you say it's never been done?
It's been a long time.
Maybe I misspoke. I don't know if it's ever been done, but I think there needs to be a
So then, anything else? Is the consensus of everyone then, we find out more detail about what a moratorium would look like and how one would be adopted pursuant to the statutory authority, and we reallocate that 10 million that we're receiving from the state in order to get going on the design for these improvements, whatever form they might take, to the Morgan's Branch pump station and the 8-inch line enforcement.
Absolutely, right away.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
And then just to add one more thing, with the lobbyists that we do have and contracted with, we should be able to also work with them, correct, in regards to trying to get some funds from the state and anything we can do to expedite as well, right? Okay. And last thing is, are we going to, or is someone from staff going to notify Lakeview Farms as well that, this has popped up and could be potential either renegotiation and or a stopper for me
Yeah, it's a
for the
stopper.
development itself?
We will notify, this is public record at this point, and carry that message forward.
Cool, thank you, I'm good, Jim.
Okay, and then just with the addendum that as you elicited, we're also going to do the, in the 24-25 budget, we've set aside money to do a capacity study for the rest of the city's infrastructure.
Yes, sir.
All right. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, the good news just continues because the next item on the agenda is C6, Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund Rate Study. So Miles, do you want to introduce this?
Yes, in similar fashion, we'll have John Wilson, our Public Works Director, introduce the folks from Withers Driving Out of Wells.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Miles. With us tonight is Shannon Moore with Withers Driving Out. She is going to be going over the water sewer rate study funds.
And Jonathan, just real quick while you're up there too, I appreciate everything you've been doing, because again, I know you're brand new and hitting the ground running on now 2 fronts here, so
Yes.
I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. As Jonathan introduced, I am Shannon Moore. Sorry.
I think if you click it, yeah. And then,
Sorry about that. As Jonathan introduced, I am Shannon Moore, Director of Financial Services at Withers Ravenel. And I am joined on this project by Steve Miller, who is not here present with us tonight, but he did a lot of the facts and findings on this financial analysis and rate study. Also Chris Rosenboom, who you just met, our Director of Utilities out of the Charlotte office, that provided a lot of the cost estimates for the CIP that we'll go over. And of course, Allison Alexander, which is your client officer here for all projects related to the town, or sorry, the city of Belmont. And to start, one of the things that we did in our study was we prioritized the 10-year capital improvement needs, which does include the sewer force main and that plant decommissioning related to Charlotte. We developed a plan to fund those needs while balancing the needed capital investments on your ratepayers, so that we didn't provide any rate shock in a single year and try to kind of flatten those rate increases over the 10-year planning period. And at the end, I will provide you with 3 defensible and viable rate structures that you can propose in the upcoming budget process. And just to look at your current water and sewer fund, your sales revenues have increased an annual average of 2% from fiscal years 2019 through 2023. Of note, there were no rate increases during those years, so that is all, that is all partially related to growth within the system. That's a typo on that slide there. Your revenue and rate increases have allowed your fund to keep up with the expense inflation during the last 5 years of the study period. And your unrestricted net position at the end of your 23 audit was around $2.5 million, which is 25% of your expenditures in the water and sewer fund. You are also servicing some debt payments for prior projects and debt issuances. Those are outlined in the written report on page 10. And I'd like to show this chart just to kind of illustrate your revenues versus your expenditures for the 5 planning periods that we looked at in the past. You will note that all of these years, except for the last 23 fiscal year, your expenditures have exceeded your revenues for the total fund. Of note, in 2020, there were some large capital expenses that were paid through the water and sewer fund, and in 2021, there was some one-time debt cost in that fiscal year. And so just to talk about some of the future capital projects that are included in the 10-year planning period, you do have a pump station and a force main related to the Charlotte water connection, which is a $10 million project. There is a 2% SRF loan fee that's also part of that project cost for a total of 10.2. You have the Abbey Outfall Sewer Rehab, which is $2.46 million. You have the Belmont Avenue Sewer Replacement, which is just under $2.2 million. The west-south, southwest outfall improvements, $1.75 million, and then upgrades to the SCADA system of just under $1.6 million. All of those projects total around $18 million. Those top 5 projects of the $30.8 million that are assumed in the 10-year capital cost. So how do we fund these investments? As you discussed in your last agenda item, we do have a state appropriation in there of $10 million. We have an SRF loan, which is also $10 million from the state revolving fund. We have an installment loan in there of $6.7 million. That occurs in the latter part of the study period. And then over the 10-year planning period, we do have capital PAYGO projects that are paid for from revenues of the fund, approximately $4.1 million, averaging around $400,000 a year. In the latter years, there are closer to $1 million in those PAYGO projects. And approved assumptions in talking with staff, other than the items that we just discussed on the previous slide, we are assuming no other appropriations or grants to be conservative in the fiscal plan. Your CIP cost, again, kind of as discussed in the last one, we are using an estimate of 5% annually for project cost based on FY24. So the year that those projects actually occur, we've added 5% annually from 24 until the planning period of those projects taking place. Your revenues are increasing at an average annual rate of 0.75. We use that figure to be a little conservative in our estimates. Any growth that you have above the 0.75 that we've used in our assumptions would of course help you bring down some of those rate increases that we're proposing. And then your expenditures, very much typical in a water and sewer capital fund, your expenditures are increasing at a greater percentage than your revenues are from natural growth. We're using the 4 to 8% range for your expense increases annually. That 8% is the higher items like your salaries, your benefits related to salary costs, and of course capital costs are increasing at a higher rate just due to current inflation. And then your sewer flows that begin with Charlotte Water Project start in fiscal year 2027, and we are using an assumption of a 4% annual increase each year for that project after it starts in 27. And then to help build up your unrestricted net position in the water and sewer fund, we're using an assumption of 90% as a target at the end of year 10 to help you build up some financial capacity in your fund. And so let's just talk for a minute about your current water and sewer customers. You currently have 7,558 water and sewer customers in the water and sewer fund for the city of Belmont. Of those, you have 6,300 that are residential customers, and you also have 62 of those 7,558 which are located inside your city limits. Your average residential monthly usage is around 3,300 gallons per month, and your residential customers are generating about 65% of your annual revenue within the water and sewer fund. Those are important at the end of the discussion when I talk about some proposed increases and how those might affect your residential versus non-residential customers. And your current water and sewer charges are comprised of your 6 volumetric charges and a fixed charge. That fixed charge does include your 2,000 gallons per month in that minimum charge. The first 3 tiers of your volumetric charge is an increasing rate structure, where the last 3 of those 6 volumetric charges are a declining rate structure. So again, those declining above the 20,000 gallons are more on your non-residential commercial customers. And your fixed charges do not vary by the type of customer that you have within your utility, but they do vary by location for that inside versus outside rate structure. And in order to plan for the needed capital within 10 years, we are proposing an 8.5% annual rate increase each fiscal year during the 10-year planning period. Just due to natural inflation, the capital that you need within those 10 years, and to bring up your fund balance to that 90% target. And of note, in order to kind of get that 8.5% rate increase, you would actually need more than 8.5% due to the price elasticity of demand, where your customers will tend to conserve less as the rates go up. And so the 3 proposed rate changes that we are providing in the rate study, the first is that we would propose to vary your fixed charges based on meter size. Currently, you charge the same fixed charge for any customer. And the reason we're proposing that is it is a best practice to push some of those fixed costs on those customers that are creating greater demand on your system. Again, kind of related to the presentation that Chris gave earlier with some of those areas within your city that are experiencing some demand on your system. The second proposed rate change is to increase the difference between those first 3 rate tiers that I spoke of, where you have an increasing rate structure. Currently, your rate structure only differentiates in those first 3 tiers by about 8 cents. So as their usage goes up, they're only paying a price differential up to that 20,000 gallons in the first, second, and third tier by 8 cents. And so we would propose to make that difference a little bit greater to drive a little bit different behavior on conserving water. And so we're proposing a rate difference instead of the 8 cents to be 50 cents within those first 3 tiers. And the third proposed change that we have made is talking about that 2,000 gallon fixed charge that is included in your monthly fee to customers, and to eliminate that 2,000 gallons so that customers are paying for all of the consumption that they're using on a monthly basis. And again, that is a best practice that we see throughout the industry. And the purpose of that allocation is also to help your small household and low-income resident users, and to help you, again, recover those fixed charges on your system, and to repay your previously existing loans and bonds that helped to build that infrastructure in the past. And at that time, I'll open it up to any questions, comments from the board.
So if you could back up a few slides to the first proposed rate change, please.
Yes.
And I believe most residential customers have the 1-inch meter, is that right?
5/8.
most-
Three-quarters, 5/8.
Okay. So would that fall into the 1-inch meter category, or are we looking at something different? Is this not residential meter size?
So when you vary your fixed charges based on meter size, you use your maximum meter flow that's established by the AWWA as a best practice. And so that is based on the maximum demand through that meter. So for a 1-inch meter, it would have a multiplier of 1.6 times what an average residential small meter is.
Okay. So does that translate to essentially for that size meter, a 60% increase?
So I think there is a table in your booklet, I think it's around page 25. And so a 3/4 inch, currently your minimum charge is $29.34.
That's for outside.
I'm sorry.
Inside's $14.65.
Sorry, you're right, $14.67 for water inside. And so when you use that 1.6 multiplier on a 1-inch, That would translate to $26.83 with the rate increase that we're proposing for the first year, which is that 8.5% rate increase.
And you said that for 10 years?
8.5% annually for 10 years, but you said we need to, because of that elasticity of the demand,
You would be looking at around 10%.
10.
The UNC Environmental Finance Center, their study indicates that for every 10% increase, you have about a 1% reduction in usage. So that's why an 8.5 would kind of translate to about a 10% increase. And this first proposed rate change generates approximately $100,000 a year.
Relatively speaking, and it's not nearly as large of an impact as the other two proposed changes.
The second proposed change, which is looking at the 3 rate tiers instead of the 8-cent difference, modifying that to a 50-cent difference, that generates about $125,000 a year. And then the third increase, which is eliminating that 2,000-gallon fixed charge, it's the smaller of the increase. It's the larger of the increases at about $140,000. And by making those changes in the 25 budget, we have assumed all of those increases for the next 10 years, just due to implementing that at the very beginning of the 10-year planning period.
So I take it these alternatives are not mutually exclusive. We can adopt all of them at the same time. Is that correct?
Yeah, you could adopt 1, 2, or 3. You could
It's
adopt only
not
portions
like
of them.
one or A or B or C. It's like these are all things that you're recommending.
Yes, they are all recommended, and again, that they're best practices and the common things that we see in utilities and supported by AWWA.
You could, since you're on that third proposed rate change, can you just walk through that again? I'm afraid I'm at a loss. I don't quite understand. Yeah, because you say eliminate the fixed charge, and then underneath it you say the purpose of the eliminate the allocation. The purpose of the allocation is to help small and low-income residential uses, so that seems counterintuitive. And then you say the best practice is to charge a fixed fee. So I'm just completely lost.
So in going back to kind of page 25, your current minimum charge for that 3/4-inch line today inside is $14.67. That includes the first 2,000 gallons, and we are proposing that you eliminate we're proposing that you eliminate that 2,000 gallons, and instead the customer's actually paying for the usage that goes through the meter. And so again, that is a best practice, so that you pass those costs where your fixed costs are helping you recover, your fixed meter charges are helping you recover your fixed charges within your water and sewer system. Your volumetric charge is helping to cover the cost that is paying for all of the water that is consumed. So the treatment cost, the chemical cost.
So it would help low income by saying that they're not paying that 2,000-gallon fixed charge. They could be using way less than that.
Correct.
Okay. That makes sense.
And your average residential, I think it was back on slide.
3,300.
Your average residential monthly usage is around 3,300 gallons a month. In some systems, we see an average closer to 4,000 or 5,000 per month.
Did I hear you say that if we were to implement all 3 proposed rate changes, that it would be sort of a one-time hit versus an annual 8.5% or 10% increase?
Well, we've made the assumption that if you make those changes in FY25, they would stay in place throughout the 10-year planning period. And so, yes, your rate increase of 8.5% is contingent upon those 3 rate changes being made as well.
I see. And just for clarity, we have not had a rate increase in 8 years, right?
2016, I think, is the date.
I had one thing. Where was the slide that showed the 2,000 gallons of non-residential? Yeah.
All right.
So when you were talking about this, so the difference with this, I'm sorry. The difference here is this removing the 2,000 gallons fixed charge is only for non-residential customers. So all of your residential customers will still have that 2,000 gallons as a minimum, and that's what's helping, low income and all that. So this is only applied to the non-residential. And all three of these options are for non-residential. The rate change is for.
Except for the fixed.
True, but residential, they all have 3/4
Yeah.
inch meters.
Unless they have like a 1 inch
There
irrigation.
are a few of them that do that want a little more pressure.
So the majority of these rate changes, the residential customer's not gonna be affected by them?
No, that
Is that an accurate
is.
interpretation? I mean,
You'd still have an increase of about, in the back of your book that they handed out, they did like the calculation of what like an example bill, so they got the minimum bill, which is the current rate, then a proposed rate, then your increase, so you can see that, the impact, if you adopted all three of these changes, then you can see like what it is currently, what the proposed change, would be, and then the total increase for minimum bill, average bill, and then an irrigation bill. Just as an example, we want to run that.
yeah, that's good.
Just so everybody's aware.
Yeah, that is helpful.
And you also know that inside the, proposed budget, the water and sewer, we couldn't balance it, because we needed a rate increase. So, we balanced the budget using all three, like adopting all three of these recommended changes so that we could actually get to the point of balancing the budget. So I just want to put that out there as well. That is, if we didn't pick option 3 and then pick option 1 and 2, it's a combination of all three of them. But we also want to show what that would be to the citizens as well.
Yeah, this is helpful. To Jason's point, so the last time we did this study was 2016.
I believe that was the date.
The last time we increased rates is 2016.
Right.
I'm not sure when we did
I
plastic.
think it was the same time, but yes.
Same time study and rate increases
Yeah.
around the same time. Thanks, Kevin. How often, just in your profession, would you say the benchmark or average should be every time we're doing like a rate study or something like that?
So in really growing communities like you're experiencing in anywhere outside of kind of the RTP in Charlotte, it's not uncommon every other year to do a refreshed rate study. And, your capital changes, this is a living, breathing document. So each annual year, you're probably going to be restructuring some of the items in your CIP plan. And so you want to take into consideration any future capital as well. And that changes, prices change, year to year.
Right, yeah, because I just wanted to kind of highlight the fact too, that, this is something we haven't done in a long time and something that we're just gonna have to play catch up to. Because again, our enterprise fund itself running at the deficit, this is to try to get it back into the green, so that we're operating at a more reasonable time. So again, I thank staff, Miles, Kevin, Jared, Jonathan, everybody again doing this, because again, we've got a lot of different stuff going on right now, and we just gotta get the stuff fixed.
I still don't understand the third one.
Which one, Jim?
I don't understand the third proposed change. I just can't wrap my head around it. Like someone help me.
I understand what she's saying, but I don't understand how it's gonna help.
Well, remember, you've got fees that are going up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're removing this fixed charge usage allocation for non-residential.
How does a fixed charge work? Maybe let me start with that.
So that is the monthly minimum that a customer pays when the bill goes out.
Okay.
And
Whether
so,
they use 2,000 or not.
correct.
Okay.
And so currently, in your minimum charge, you're including that first 2,000 gallons, instead of them paying for 2,000 gallons based on the rate schedule of,
Okay, I got that.
Based on the volumetric charge, they're paying a fixed charge
Right.
for that first.
So how does eliminating that for non-residential customers, how does that benefit us?
So it is typical for commercial customers to actually pay for all of the water usage that goes through their meter. And so in this case, because you are including that allocation of $2,000 in your current rate structure, they pay the same whether they use 1 gallon or 2,000 gallons. And so by structuring it so that they are actually paying for those first 2,000 gallons instead of getting it included in the minimum, you're getting that additional revenue off of the non-residential customers.
Okay, I see.
And so the current rate, for the 2,000 to 5,000 is like $7.47 per 1,000 gallons. So that's an additional $14 per month for each of those customers that are using greater than that 2,000.
Okay, I get it now, thank you. Any other questions? So, Miles, what are we being asked to do in connection with these findings and this information?
The recommendation will be to adopt the proposed rates that, the rate structure changes for, options 1, 2, and 3. And then on page 25, it shows, year one, the rates that will be proposed inside the fee schedule. That's table 12 in your handout at your desk. That will be proposed, staff recommendation.
But this would be approved during the budget cycle, right? Is this something that would go into the budget, or is this a one-off that we need to approve the fee structure outside of the budget?
It could be approved at the time of the adopted budget. You can also adopt it right now if you like as well. For those, you can change the fees at any point during the fiscal year. But we did factor in for next fiscal year to balance the budget using that rate. So if you like, through the adoption of the budget process, then this thing could be, or this new rate structure could be implemented as of July 1st.
So, any preferences to whether we approve the rates standalone, or obviously, as Miles said, that these rates are incorporated into the proposed budget now, which is how we balance budget. So, I guess however you all want to.
If we approve the budget, we're essentially approving this rate, this new rate.
Yeah, that's right. Are you fine with that, Parks? Does that work? Okay.
So just wait until we approve the budget?
Yeah, so just take this for information and divide
On
up.
the fee schedule.
Actually, though, would it, so just trying to think of timeline here, though, would we not almost want to maybe approve this tonight so that we give it adequate notice to residents? Does that kind of make sense, Miles, or is it?
Oh, I see what you're saying, because the budget's not going to be approved.
From the rate increase would be effective July.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
Yeah, if the consensus of council is that you want to adopt a new rate, then we could start the process of notifying citizens that we have a new water rate study coming out effective July 1st.
I'll definitely include.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
All the information needed.
It
sounds like
I
they're-
think that's a good idea. Good point.
Okay, so,
These proposed rates are for non-residential, correct?
Except, as I understand it, that would affect, the proposed rate change one would affect residential customers as well, along the lines of what we have in this handout and what we have on page 25. The other two proposed changes, those simply affect, maybe let's be careful about two.
So one would only affect residential, like if they had an irrigation or they had larger than that standard
I mean, we're
meter
talking about
size.
a handful of people that
Yeah.
are gonna have one.
So very few residential here. On this one, because the rate difference is being increased between those first three tier structures, so for anybody that uses less than 20,000 gallons a month, they would be affected by that price differential where we're structuring it a little bit more. And if residential have greater than 20,000, like if they have a really large irrigation or a really large yard, that change only affects those first three tiers within your volumetric charges. The third one is non-residential. And then, of course, the 8.5% rate increase that we are proposing, which equates to the 11% once you consider reduced consumption, 10.1%. That affects all of the rate structure across the board.
The rate tiers have, I mean, you're the expert, but I like the idea of the more water you use, the more you're gonna pay for it. But have we, do we wanna have a discussion about the actual tiers themselves? Or are we just gonna?
Well, what would you suggest? I mean, to Miles's point, we can adjust as we need to receive bid on that. I think the proposal itself was to get us to the adequate revenue to help support and sustain the water plant. So I mean, I guess there's many different ways you can skin a cat on this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look, in one of the foldouts, it's in the front pages of the book, table 7. The rate changes that we talked about, so the first, the second, the third proposed rate changes, those are on, the bottom of the first page of table 7, where you see those yellow lines. The water revenue from rate structure changes produces $225,000 in fiscal year '25. The sewer rate structure changes produces $140,000 in additional revenue. And then the rest of the rate increase is again increasing kind of that 10% across the board between water and sewer, which is about $345,000 annually. So all in all of the increases that you're looking at from '24 to '25 to fund the water and sewer program is somewhere around $1 million. And that's with the 3 changes plus the 8.5%, 10% increase. And then again, that kind of end goal was at year 10 to bring your fund balance for the total water and sewer fund somewhere around 90%, which is a benchmark for cities your size.
And we're at 25% right now.
23 audit was at 25%, yeah. You dipped down in those 2 years in the beginning of the slides. These 2 years right here in 20. So it's taken you some time from 20 to 23 to get from about you were at 66% in the 2020 audit. You dipped down with that large 21 reduction to 14%. And so you're now back at around 25% as of the 23 fiscal year audit. So part of that rate increase is again, increasing that fund balance for a utility your size.
So where are we at?
Well, so we haven't had a rate increase in 8 years, and now we're talking about an annual increase of 10 plus for the next 10. Right?
And again, some of that increase can come from additional growth within the city. So if you get more than that 0.75% that we've used in our assumptions, then that can help kind of tamper down. And back to your point, how often do you do a rate study? You know, if you've got a lot of development in the city, you may want to do it every other year and kind of look and benchmark where you are.
And this gets us to, what is that target of expenditures, 25?
That gets you from 25 in the 23 audit, 25% in the 23 audit, to the end of fiscal year 2034, which is the end of the 10-year planning period, to around 90%.
So you want to have, the goal is to have 90% of your expenditures as a net position.
Correct. In a capital intense, that's probably not what you want in your general fund, but in a water and sewer utility fund where you've got millions of dollars worth of capital coming down the pipe, that 70 to 100% is not uncommon.
Okay.
Yeah, because when we look at CIP, we look at the enterprise fund, was it separate coming from the fund itself to fund the projects and things like that. And we have quite a few on there. And again, as we discussed at one of the retreats, a very aging water treatment plant, right? That needs some attention.
Let alone what that capacity study the rest of the city's going to reveal.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate that this is the first increase we, are getting slapped with, but at the end of the day, if they could see this piece of paper, it'll make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
This needs to go in their bill when we let them know.
I would even include the last time we did a rate study.
Absolutely, because I'm not looking to have an 8.5 increase on anything that I have to pay for. I live in the city, I get it, but at the end of the day, our hands are tied. This is what we need to do to be able to take care of what we've got in front of us, and not just like our current, but what we've got for our future, I feel like.
It's a lot of fixing the past.
Got a lot of cleaning up to do, per se.
A lot.
I think that's kind of what I was getting at with the tiers, is there a way to, we looked at lowering
So now lessen the blow a little bit.
that first tier, maybe we lessen the cost of that and then offset it on the higher tier, because, I'm somebody that uses a lot of water, I like to irrigate and all that, so, I understand that my cost will be a little higher, but I haven't heard a good reason why we picked those tiers.
So we did not change any of the tier structure in this case, other than that 2,000 from the second and third proposed increase. One of the important things to think about, especially on that first tier structure, when you have a tier break of 5,000 gallons, that gets you additional funding points for any type of future state funding that you may go after, because they look at that 5,000 gallon as kind of the delineation between promoting conservation in your water and sewer. So in future funding rounds, that will actually get you, through a lot of the state programs, additional funding points. So we like to see that break at 5,000, which is where you already are. If you were to decrease that first tier, you would have to do a larger increase overall, because again, 65% of your customers are coming from residential, and the average residential is that 3,300 gallons. So if you were to reduce the price of that first tier, you would just need to have higher increases across the board elsewhere. Because 65% of your customers are at that average 3,300 gallons. And your first price break is that 5,000 tier. Does that help?
This is not ideal, but at the end of the day, what do we do?
Sell more water.
Where you can.
Whatever we can.
Staff obviously recommends this, which I respect your recommendations. When was this study done? When was this?
This physical study, we literally just concluded 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago is when you finished, so y'all had about 2 weeks to study it, give or take.
It started, I think, sometime in the fall.
It's been a while, a year almost.
October,
seems like.
November. So we've spent the last kind of 6 months.
Yeah, and the data's kind of fed towards Withers, not with an outcome from the staff of saying we want a 10% rate increase.
Yeah,
We give them the CIP, they plug the CIP into their software. We give them all the line items for proposed budget, plus they have all the previous year's audits. And it shows exactly the amount of money for operations, salaries, and capital to fund the water sewer fund. And then also pay for certain things in the future years. And so they plug all that in and then make these recommendations to staff, just so that we know that we can balance the budget, like I'm saying. And at that point is when it came out that it was the 10%, 9.5%, 10% increase, that we needed to have 8.5% revenue increase, I think is the way I understood it. We needed that revenue to come in. And to get that revenue, you had to have an increase somewhere. And so, it's not ideal, of course, but I think it sets us up for the future very well, moving forward, that next year we've got the data plugged in, we know that we can meet the goals of what we're gonna do. Next year will be a different budget, there'll be different costs associated with capital projects, and the cost of goods and services will be a little bit different, so we can reevaluate it next year to see if we can change a rate plus or minus a little bit, just to try to stay ahead of the curve. But definitely looking at it every single year, try a rate study like you're saying, like Withers is recommending every 2 years at least that we do a rate study, so we're not ever getting behind of 8 years later.
And we brought this up last time, and I think I've mentioned it. Can we make that policy, bring something before council to get a schedule on these water and sewer studies? And then just, I know a future council could change the policy, but at least for them, we know we're setting them up for success in the future. There's a reason why we did this.
We can, yep, so I've been keeping track of all the different policies we need to create as we move through this budget process, and then I imagine sometime in June, July, bring those back as like a formal policy that you all can adopt at that time.
And And just to be clear, for anybody that's watching, you know, on this piece of paper, we keep talking about, you know, the minimum bill is an increase of $3.10. An average bill is an increase of $4.72, and then if you were to use irrigation, the increase is 88 cents. So when you're speaking percentages, it sounds a bit steep, but when you're looking at it on paper, which, you know, I'm hopeful that we can get these in the bill, you know, in their bills, that it will make a little bit more sense, that it's not gonna be a $50 to $100 bill increase, because I can promise you I would agree.
I'll be, it's gonna be like that here for 10 years.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you have any other similar client experiences where they've gone for this length of time without an adjustment to rates, and then all of a sudden they're having to do something like we're having to?
Your rate increases are less than we see some utility customers that have gone, you know, 5+ years. We also looked at some benchmarking data with staff and compared you to, you know, a 25-mile radius, a 50-mile radius. Also looked at those with the same water source, in the same watershed, and you're around the median or less for your peer groups in terms of an average residential bill.
All right, so what do we want to do? What's our next?
Well, if
we don't agree on the schedule tonight, I don't think we should pass this. If anybody has something that they want to review
That's
further,
fair.
then we need to kick it off and then just try to get that ironed out. But if we're all kind of in agreement, it is what it is, I just say, let's go ahead and get this done tonight so that they can start issuing these types of notice. I mean, is that fair, Miles?
Yes, sir.
Because I do want to allow everyone an opportunity, because I don't want to vote for something that someone else has got something.
I agree that we need to implement this, I'm just wondering if are we, I mean, this is a lot of information to digest here. We just looking at it for the first time, I guess.
You don't foresee any other options, thinking outside the 9 dots, where, you know, particularly like low-income households could, you know, to Charlie's point, you know, if we were to reclassify some of these volume classifications, and maybe give more relief to them, and maybe they, and I understand that would result in, you know, larger rate increases for the other classifications, but you feel like this is the most efficient means, I mean, when we cross the demographics of the city, that this is the most efficient means over a 10-year run to get to where we need to be.
I would say so. The only thing that we see with other clients that is not in your tier structure is where every single tier increases. You don't have enough of large commercial that you're going to make that much of a difference. Plus, if you want to be business friendly, you have to have some balance there of the rate tiers where you've got 20,000 or greater gallons. If those were increasing even above the first 3 tier structures, you would really start to penalize large industries. And so you want to be cautious of that as well.
When you think about some of the new businesses that we're thinking about locating here, some of them are planning to use a considerable amount of water. I mean, maybe, like you said, Miles, you know, to your point, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, maybe that helps to offset some of these increases, and we could look at doing some reductions perhaps.
They should, and you know, I think last time we talked about this, wasn't it Spartan Dyers is the largest consumer of our water, and they've been in town for years, so again, they provide jobs, they're a stable company that have been here for a long time, so we really don't want to penalize them too much to try to share the burden there.
But, I mean, everybody's been doing penalized.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things, when you don't go up on a rate since
Oh, I
2016,
agree.
you know.
I agree, but I mean, everybody's gonna get penalized, we can't.
And your large industrial customers are already being hit with that first alternative, where their base meter charge is increasing. You know, for a 6-inch line, it's going to $536 on table 12. So you've got to have a little bit of balance there on the volumetric and that base rate all at the same time. And so that's why we did not look at increasing every single one of the tiers, because they're taking the hit right here.
I think in reading it, I mean, I think it's as equitable as possible.
Yeah.
Again, I think we could make adjustments if needed, but you're just gonna penalize someone else more. Again, I hate to be pragmatic, and I know folks watching are gonna be pissed off, and I'm pissed off that we're having to increase this, but, you know, it is what it is.
Right.
You know,
You can't go 8 years without.
previous councils did not do what they should have done, and now we're facing this situation where we've got to take.
And I just want to be clear on this too, and then I'll quit asking questions. So let's say 2 years from now, we decide we want to change the rate. Can we change the rate of the increase? Do we have,
Yeah, we can
even though
adjust
it's a
it next year
10-year?
if we wanted to.
We can adjust it anytime.
We can change that, okay, I wanted to be clear on that. So just because this is a 10-year,
Yeah,
Plan.
plan.
It doesn't become the
doesn't
Ten
mean that we
Commandments.
can't, right, it doesn't mean that we can't do
Yeah.
Mhm.
an
I mean, we
adjustment
can,
necessary.
I have that, like, we can adjust it in the middle of the year.
You can adjust it at any point in time in the year.
Well,
I mean, sometimes it's not all like winning the day and making decisions that everyone loves, sometimes making decisions that you have to make.
so to Alex's point, after hearing what we've heard, is everybody in agreement with going forward with our proposed rate changes?
I
All right. I'll make a motion to accept the 3 proposed rate changes, incorporated in
I think all changes proposed, because again, there's a 3 proposed plus the
okay.
percent.
Yes, and that's built into the cash flow statements.
All right.
I'll make a motion.
Into the budget, correct?
Yes, we are.
So I'll make a motion to accept the proposed rate changes presented by Withers Revenue.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Jason, second by Alex, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as Charlie was alluding to, we come to the next item on the agenda, which is C7 fiscal year 2024-2025 proposed budget, which is going to incorporate, as proposed, those changes that we just approved. So I'll turn it over to Miles.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council.
Charlie,
Real quick, I just want, this might be, just going too into the weeds, but it's really good, I'm sure the public knows that this rate increase is not due to the findings we just found about.
Yes.
It's
Great
like,
point.
Yeah, that is very good.
Yeah.
That is really good.
I want them to see, I don't want this NFL not seeing their water going up and then assuming it's because we're having to
Yeah.
fix something.
I thought about that this afternoon. I was like, we need to.
Yeah, so, with Withers, we actually had a conversation about that just last week about, was Withers did both the rate study and they did the capacity study, and knowing that they knew internally that, there was issues with, the capacity, they wanted to know that did staff want them to include, any proposed increases or any proposed infrastructure improvement amounts inside this rate. And, as you can see by the study itself, it did not have that in there at all. So no, let's keep that separate, right now, but we don't know enough about it. We didn't know whether, $12 million or $14 million or no dollars. So we decided to keep that completely separate for future years. And so I imagine that, next fiscal year, or the fiscal year after that, when the project comes around, it's going to be plugged into a CIP at that point. And it may affect the rate in the future, but not for this fiscal year.
Not to micromanage, I almost wonder if it might just be beneficial when you guys come up with what you want to send out to residents, maybe just pass it by council for the final okay, and then, if that's okay. Just so that we're all aligned on what the residents are getting out, because again, you're right, I mean, that's a good point right there, that we want to delineate between the two.
Good point. All right. Without further ado, Miles, you can continue presenting the proposed 24-25 fiscal year budget.
Yes, so, at the April 15th, workshop, staff presented the proposed budget. So in keeping with the adopted budget calendar, May 6th, today's date, I'm going to present the, budget highlights as they were presented, at the April 15th, workshop, and then give you all a chance to, react to those. I'm just going to go down through the list. It's going to be kind of monotonous because I'm probably going to read some of these things out. So just bear with me as I go through it, just for highlight purposes. So for the general fund, let me recall that, $33,991,083. For the general fund highlights, this is inside the council packet. We're going to maintain the current tax rate at 0.455 per $100 value. Of course, to add valorem revenues are estimated to increase 12% from the previous fiscal year. This increase was due to conservative budgeting that occurred during last fiscal years due to the reevaluation process, which we accounted for a 10% appeal rate, plus a number of new homes that were being constructed. We did propose 17 new positions were requested by departments, and I've recommended 7 new positions, and they are for 4 police officers, 2 firefighters, and 1 planning technician. We do have a 2% cost of living adjustment inside the budget, as well as up to 3% merit. We did include funding to implement the salary study at $269,645, which will adjust 65 employee salaries to the minimum of the proposed salary schedule. It did include a 2% per year of service in the city to reduce the compression that may be associated with employees in the same position. I know that you see that at 65 employees, I think that I had recalled that there was a 45 total employees. That's my fault. I counted wrong on a different option. It does not change the amount. It just changed the number of people that will be affected. So there's actually 86 total employees and not 45. Inside the general fund, it's 65 employees. I just want to make that clear. For health insurance, we're experiencing a 2% increase. Property and liability insurance premium, we're experiencing a 17.5% increase, and that's to cover our property, our buildings, automobile, workers' compensation, and cyber insurance. We're receiving a mandatory retirement contribution to the North Carolina retirement system, which is Orbit. This increased to 13.6% for regular employees, and an increase of 15.04% for law enforcement officers. We did include in the budget funding for certain items that we discussed in the past during the council retreat. One was a lobbyist. The other was the election board costs for the bond. We do have architectural services for the city hall. We are budgeting for public communication tools and infrastructure lifecycle model. We have $1.7 million dedicated to capital improvement plan. We have utilized prior year audited numbers and current year spending to more accurately reflect the line items that were regularly exceeding budget to correct the audit finding. And the budget percentage breakdown by department follows. 28% of the general fund is police, 16% is the fire department, 14% to streets, 7% to administration, 5% for recreation, 4% for planning, 3% community development, 11% was debt, 8% capital, and 4% was the other. For the water and sewer enterprise fund highlights, the water and sewer rates have not been adjusted since 2016. It states with year-to-year inflation, the cost of goods and services have continued to increase over time. So with no rate adjustment in 8 years, our projected fiscal year 24-25 expenditures outpaced our revenues as the initial budget process began. As mentioned during the April workshop, the options to balance the budget we had 3 different options there. 1 was to transfer from the net position. 2 was to reduce operation and capital expenses by 20%. 3 was to adjust the rate structure and our fees, or a combination of all 3. The water and sewer fund's current rates are not sustainable, and the recommendation was to implement a new rate structure. So staff engaged a consultant to study the water and sewer rates. This presentation recommendation just occurred at the May 6th council meeting, and so we did use the revenues that Withers had projected to balance the budget for expenditures. And for water and sewer revenues, it was $10,387,884, and the expenditures in the same $10,387,884. The operational expenses are estimated to increase by 10% to maintain our permit compliance. We did include a 2% cost of living adjustment, as well as up to 3% merit. And we did fund the salary study, in the amount of $73,983, which will adjust 21 employee salaries to the minimum of the new proposed salary schedule. It also includes a 2% per year service with the city. And Westwood Drive and Limestone Drive drainage improvements. For the capital improvements plan, the 5-year total for the general fund CIP was $24,380,500. And for fiscal year 24-25, as I mentioned before, $1,740,527 budgeted. The total for the water and sewer enterprise fund in the capital improvement plan is $160,357,646. Fiscal year 24-25, $10,562,000 was budgeted, with $10 million from state grant funds. And as I mentioned before, bring that back to you all for reconsideration to include design of Morgan's Ranch pump station and the force main on South Florida. The next step of the budget process, this proposed budget document will be available for a public inspection in the city clerk's office. At the next meeting on June 3rd, if there's feedback incorporated, we'll bring that back with a budget ordinance that's prepared for adoption at that time. The next inside the council packet for attachment 1, it shows the approved staffing, and it shows that there are 186 full-time positions listed in the various departments. And then also in attachment 2 is the revenues and expenditures spreadsheets for water and sewer fund. Given that these were not balanced before, we'll include that in this document. So, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll turn it back over to you for further discussion.
All right, any questions or items for discussion?
Yes, myself and Miles and Kevin and Jared and Jason met for a couple hours a couple weeks ago in regards to the budget, along with getting some Excel sheets. I appreciate y'all sharing the backup data for that. It is extremely helpful for me. One thing I did want to note is we had discussed during our meeting adding in a policy or a future policy to subject to approval by council, and earmarking per se a whatever dollar amount or whatever percent, whatever staff comes up with what we feel is reasonable, to a restricted account for the future that will continue to fund or go into an interest-bearing account for capital improvement plans. So essentially what we're saying is we're setting up, and I think there's some things in mind, setting up future councils in my mindset for success by earmarking a set dollar amount. And I'm not talking about the total dollar amount, so we're not saying every year it needs to be $1.7 million. We're saying maybe 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever it is, or a percent is set aside for the future to fund future projects. And then that could go into incorporate into our future planning model to say, hey, this is X amount of dollars. Similar to what the Abbey said they're going to do for the road improvement plans that we all intend to partner up with. So again, Miles, I believe that's sitting on your desk for that, if council is interested in that. Again, I've looked at this quite a bit. I had a lot of questions in regards to the line items. I appreciate staff bearing with me on that one. The only thing that me personally I would like to change or see adjusted in it, more opinions to this, I don't feel like the demand would necessarily require additional position. As we come to full build out, we'll begin to see new developments come down, potentially even with a moratorium on the South Point Peninsula, so maybe it's worth revisiting later down the road. But as those houses are built out, I don't foresee, again, from my perspective, the need for redevelopment and or renovations to require this position. Again, I don't think the information provided for me was suitable to suffice that, but that's just my opinion. That's all I have, Jim.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I concur with that. I do have a question maybe about the meeting you guys had. Did you come up with a number or a percentage?
No, I think we were gonna kind of let staff play around with that, let Jared and Kevin and them kind of come up or benchmark.
Council.
And then, just to call out, our team has done an excellent job in regards to our interest that we're getting on some of our investment accounts, so I do agree.
One thing, and Alex, please don't think I'm going against you, I don't like contradicting anything anybody says. I'm not a fan of that, But I went back and I was thinking about that when I was looking over the positions that were recommended, and I know there were 17 that you guys, that they were requested, but then staff and you personally, Miles, recommended those 7, and I know that planning and zoning was one of those. If we weren't to pass the budget because of this one position, would you guys contract that position out? It is a needed position, obviously, because you're recommending it.
Right, yeah, so, we did talk about, how we would fill the needs in that department, given that there are, many permits that need to come through. We have, several approved subdivisions and so we talked about how would we go through that process, and more than likely we would just have to hire it out to a consultant. And so if that was the consensus of council, was to not fund this position, we talked about it internally that we would take the funds associated with the salary and benefits and then move that amount into professional services so that we get contracted out.
So essentially for that said position, I would much rather staff it than contract it out.
Well, I think that's a good point to bring up. And on the contrary to that, is that staffing a full-time position is in perpetuity, whereas contracting it out is only as needed demand.
Sure.
So again, trying to come up with a theme to the future budget as we start leveling off on staffing, new house build out. Again, I don't want us to be overstaffed because in the future, we're not going to necessarily probably terminate somebody or downsize, because history proves that we have not historically done that. So again, that's where I'm coming from, that I think it would be prudent to contract it out as needed basis, as opposed to keeping it in perpetuity for the city.
I think I'm hung up on it, and the reason I'm hung up on it is because I know that people are gonna roll off. There are gonna be people that are gonna roll off. And I know that also there's a lot of new people. And Tiffany, I don't know if I'm even allowed to ask this, but like, who's senior in that department?
You want me to come up?
Sure, or you can stay there, it's fine.
Okay, so I've been with the city of Belmont since March of 2020. I'm the most senior other than Alec Robinson, who's spent 25 years of public service with the city of Belmont. And so the two of us are the most senior. I have 3 staff members that are under the 7-month mark in terms of tenure. So we are working our best to actively have our more senior staff to train. That takes time and it takes effort, and we have a really great staff, and I'm super thankful for them. But that does take time. It takes actually higher level positions time to actually apply towards permitting, which means we're paying that position effectively more by using some of our more senior staff to do that job or to help train that job until we can fully staff up at the most appropriate levels. To train them, but it's less training than a more senior position.
Right. Yeah, we talked about also internally about, just the customer service aspect of having a consultant versus an in-house person to do the work. Our customer service response time may suffer a little bit if you contract it out, because you have to send them the things and then they have to go internally and send it back to us, versus like having somebody, internally doing, that kind of work where you have, Tiffany right by somebody's side who can help you with that process.
How is that customer service response time now? Would you say that it's stretched? Is it?
Well, given that we're asking for a position, I would say that, yeah, we're a little stretched on the planning side, just because there's so many new staff there too, so they're all getting trained up still as well. And then you can factor in the other, mention so I send that to you all, but if you want me to call it out, I mean, that's fine, but that's the email I sent, kind of the explanation of why we're asking for this position, and it really just states like the number of things that, the position will be responsible for, some of the projects that are
guess that's where I'm at. If it's recommended out of 17, you recommended 7, I can agree with that.
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I understand your point, and I agree with your point about when you bring on a new position, that is most likely in perpetuity, right? Because, I do think we're gonna reach a point where, you know, that pace of new development is gonna plateau, and, you know, there's gonna be more of a demand perhaps on our planning and zoning folks for renovation permits and things like that. I guess I would err on the side of agreeing with staff's recommendation for this position.
I think that's where I'm at. I understand 100% what you're saying about, you know, it might be in a needed position, but for a certain amount of time. But if you're recommending it, you're saying that we need it for indefinitely, correct?
Right.
So, I mean, I don't work in planning and zoning, and Lord knows you don't want me to, but everybody knows that. But I also know when you work at a job and you're spread thin and you need help, and and I'm not saying that you're spread thin, I'm saying, and I'm sorry, please.
No, I mean, I think my position stays, and I think that's something that I've looked at and talked about, so maybe, last couple of years, on this, when you look at these budgets, and it's kind of the same story, when we're talking about, hey, we need this, resources allocations. So again, I mean, for me, it's maybe a different kind of perspective.
Understood.
And again, another thing that's come to light too, I mean, you've got, Del Webb approved, right, so there's a couple hundred homes there, but Pittenger 2 and 3 at one point in time had a developer that was calling for it, which is now backed away. So again, the demand is dwindling is from my perspective, but again, that's just my perspective.
Well, I think it's like 51-49.
I wouldn't have even said anything, but I actually had it start off about the 7 being recommended, and then you mentioned it, and I was like, okay.
I think, I understand Alex's point and Charlie's point. Like Jason said, I understand, in this year's budget, it wouldn't make a difference because we, keep it the same, but I understand what you're saying in future years' budgets. I mean, I do think, though, that if it ends up being the case that we don't need the position anymore in a few years, I mean, we've already seen a bunch of turnover in the planning department. If somebody existing were to leave, we've just, all right, we're not going to rehire to fill the position, problem would take care of itself. So, I mean, if we're taking a straw poll, I think I'd come down with Catherine and Jason at the end of the day.
Has government ever done that? Where we decide not to hire?
Well, Miles. Have we?
We evaluate year to year first.
Yeah, we have, someone obviously serving currently in a senior position, and like you said, demand did not justify filling that position. If, when they retire and go off, then we're left with, I guess, four staff instead of 5 at that point.
That's just where I'm.
That's at the future time.
Oh, we've learned.
You guys learned that.
Wait a minute. There's not a big game tonight. It's what previous councils do to future councils.
No, you're right.
So that's my mindset.
So a contractor, for customer service perspective, a contractor is detrimental? Is that?
Well, it sounds like they wouldn't be on site.
Yeah.
Is that
Right.
correct?
You couldn't get a contractor on site?
I don't know that we could get a contractor on site. I don't know the exact answer to that.
Can we look into that? Because I know in the private sector, we have tons of contractors at my company that are on site that will come in, we'll train them up, we need them for a year or two. Checks the boxes there, maybe a full-time position rollover in the future if they want to stay. But then if you don't need them, it's easier to terminate the contract than it is a full-time employee, so that's a good point.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, the private sector does that, like you said, that's the direction.
Banks do that all the time.
Oh, God, yeah. So
does Duke Energy, and I can give you an earful on contractors with Duke Energy.
We've had some good ones at the company.
To Alex's point, I mean, but the demand I do think is
working in that department too, as a staff member. So really, like, we're seeing what we're shooting to them, but like, in reality, I don't know really what your day in and day out looks like. So respectfully,
The
I
contractor
just,
would still be the resource, they'd still get a resource. The compromise is that it's not in perpetuity, so when the demand is no longer there, you just terminate the contract as opposed to terminating a full-time employee.
And I don't know the ins and outs of having like a contractor on site working side by side with city employees. You know that city employees have to abide by employee personnel policies that are on site here, and then we bring somebody else to stand, you know, beside them that could be doing a very similar job, and then.
well, if you're a contractor, you know, you're looking for a real job. You're not just gonna work. So if that contractor was trained up and then, you know, they get a call for a full-time solid $80,000, $100,000 job, they're gonna bounce. I can assure that, because Duke Energy, you know, I had my husband making great money, and then he had a contractor come in, literally making $10 an hour, doing the same job that John was doing. As soon as they were offered the job, and John had already trained them up, they were out. And so that opportunity of, you know, the learning curve for them was gone, and that he had to start over again. So really, it was just a recurring problem where he was focused so much on that the work actually wasn't ever getting done.
Is that planning tech, are they customer facing, or are they more behind the scenes working?
Do they, we do it?
Yeah, sure. So, my planning technician is probably my jack of all trades that wears the most hats of anybody in my department. They're the first face that you see when you walk into my department at that front desk that processes in real-time permits. So somebody coming to get something, they're at that front desk. They also handle everything that comes in online. They go out with the city's inspectors to make sure that every single family residential permit that comes in has the site properly prepared before each permit is issued. So it's not just in the office. They actually put on boots and go out with the inspectors 3 days a week to make sure that those sites and those requests are properly processed. They handle all the denials. They handle all the invoicing that goes along with those. So they have to be well versed in technology, and there are portions of that job that probably could be done remotely in terms of the online processing of the permits. But that customer facing, answering the phone when it rings,
That's what I would have.
and being that front face as well as going on site with the inspectors is something we would need to look at on whether or not a contractor and how that would look. Right now, my employees are employees, and so they ride alongside of the inspector and they go together to do those inspections, where the inspector is looking at the utilities and we're looking at some of the other zoning requirements on site. It's not to say it's not possible, and I'd be interested if you all are interested in trying to pull together what that might look like, but traditionally it has been a staff position, and that's how that position is
I
functioned.
think there's certain intangibles like that, like Tiffany mentioned, that you're probably not gonna get from a contract employee in certain roles that you will get from a staff person. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for that too.
They're answering the phones and then going on site as well?
That's correct. Yep, so they are scheduled and coordinate inspections. So, whoever's sitting at that front desk, they are responsible for answering the phones, but when they are on site, those phones roll over to other members of the team. So we always make sure that someone's in the office to answer the phones when they're out on site, but their job is very fluid in whether it's in the office environment or in the field.
Well, yeah.
Who would have thought we would have gotten this comment?
I mean, I would, so it seems like maybe there's some more information that could be obtained. It's not going to change the numbers
not gonna
of this year. Well, I mean,
In perpetuity would.
right, but the overall numbers for this year's budget will be the same. It would just, they'd be
Professional
perhaps
services.
plugged in a little different. Let me put this to the side for the moment, because it seems we're sort of in you know, like a 3-2 impasse, if you will. Is there anything else with the budget that anyone has concerns about at the moment, as proposed?
I think I'm pretty on board with everything.
My most of my concerns were addressed during my meeting with staff.
Because I would say, obviously, we gotta have a balanced budget, so if there are concerns that percolate, at the 11th hour, at the eve of, and we also have to pass it by, June 30th.
Right.
So, if there are concerns that percolate at the 11th hour, if we're going to, if the intention is to pass it at the June 3rd meeting, that's gonna cause a lot of scrambling to try and readjust things. So, if there are concerns, and I get that we have, this disagreement, a close question with the planning board, or planning technician position. If there's anything else, this would be the time to speak, I think, in fairness to staff.
But just to confirm, Miles, you're already gonna work with staff to determine whether it's a percentage, most likely a percentage that we want to set aside and sort of some CIP allowance, and you'll come back, that will be incorporated into the final draft, right?
No, I don't anticipate the CIP policy to be a part of the budget. I think that I like to stick to the budget process and then bring that back as a policy for you all to adopt with the other policies, so that I don't want to get that tangled up with like the numbers of a budget.
Okay.
That's like more like a policy decision. I'd rather, in my mind, keep them separate. I think we can do that, and then bring them all back, all the policies we just discussed with the CIP being one of them.
So, but just so I understand, if we pass this policy, which will probably be after the budget, we can make a budget amendment to abide by the policy, correct? Because still, there's gonna need to be dollars that are, I guess you could take it from the existing capital, but I think the intention, or my intention is ensuring this is in addition to future, for the future. I mean,
If that was like, let me make sure I understand this, Lena, is that if y'all set a policy right now associated with this year's budget for the CIP, it's gonna affect the CIP projects that we have listed. So we'll have to go in to say we've got 1.7, whatever that amount is, associated with these projects. And if y'all want to do,
adopt such a policy and consider it, I was more under the impression that it would be for future years.
well, maybe we just take, again, what is from the existing, because you gotta start somewhere, from the existing capital budget, and then take it from there, right? And then for future years, you establish it, or we can just do future years. The intent is that we have it established, is really what I'm looking for, or looking towards.
yeah, if council wants to make a policy as part of the budget, we'll have to bring back the policy as a limit, and then just whatever is minused out at the next workshop, so that you all can adopt the budget coming up in June. Or if we stick to the CIP in future years, adopt that policy for like moving into like 25, 26, which would be the next fiscal year. And then there's two different paths there, we can't like mix the two together because it affects the CIP.
My preference would be the latter.
That's fine.
Yeah, 25.
But as long as it's brought
Yeah,
for us to vote.
Yeah,
and then we
I'm
can
happy
take
with
it.
that. I just think, it's late in the day to start.
Jim, that's fine, that's fine.
Anything else?
200, 500? Yes, so, inside the wastewater treatment plant, we have a lot of sludge, and it's, we're bumped up on our permit right now. And inside, when I read out the budget highlights, in the water and sewer fund, to maintain permit compliance, is that we have to, remove those solids out of the basins. And what they do is they actually have to go in, get the solids out, compress them, and then take that to the landfill. And there's a lot there. We've got, we've pressed probably $100,000 worth this year. And $100,000, we're still like bumping up against our permit on like the nutrients inside our wastewater treatment plant. So
How often is that done?
it needs to be done every single year, like, because you get solids inside the plant, so it fills up the basins, and then you have less capacity, and it messes up the nutrients and everything that's going on, the bugs that are doing their certain things in the wastewater treatment plant. And so, yeah, we need to get that out, relatively quick. We were even thinking about doing like a budget amendment this year, we could have afforded it,
Anything else? So, my understanding, and feel free to correct, is that, we move forward, the one issue to still be resolved is the position, and, the options are either gonna be, we approve it as proposed, or we don't approve the planning technician position, in which case a couple numbers would be reallocated, but the overall numbers would still be the same with what's proposed. Is that?
And I think it's fair, and just to kind of just one more comment. Say we do it this year and do it at the consultant level. If it doesn't work out, we always have the budget next year to add the position in. At least we can say we tried to set it up is really kind of where I'm coming from. And I think then we can say we've done our due diligence, and then we can say we can add the position in. That's the last thing I'll say to that.
Is that palatable, Miles?
Let me ask you a question though, here. So inside our ordinance, we have a salary line inside the budget ordinance. Yep. And so for next, at the workshop coming up, we can answer some of the questions about contractor on site. And then, at the next meeting, I guess get consensus so that we can have the actual budget ordinance to be adopted because you have the salary line.
Right.
It'll be changed, even though the bottom dollar will be the same. Inside that salary line will be a difference. And so, really, at the next meeting, if we can provide more information to you all, then you all can make the decision on whether to include it in the budget or not include it in the budget. And that still lines us up for the June 3rd adoption.
I think what may be helpful too, and I don't know if you can gather this by the next meeting or when you want to present that information, but are we presuming that all the responsibilities that this planning technician would be performing could be performed on a contracted basis? Are there certain things that maybe they couldn't do? Are we presuming that, and we don't know? Are there any other examples where you have a contracted planning technician who does what we need them to do on a contract basis?
That's a good point. Yeah. We have an example employee currently, or position currently that we contract out, and that's the city engineer's position. So we contract it out, and there's certain, things that,
Similarities there you can draw maybe?
and we can check with the side that we contracted out with to see if they have a similar kind of type position for planning tech. I think that's probably that's the perfect way to go with it.
Well, we can also ask the other municipalities as well and see if it works for them. I mean, you've got Gastonia, you've got all these other municipalities, and maybe that's what they do. So maybe we could ask them as well.
Okay. Well, I think that's fair, but we're gonna have to decide once and for all at the May workshop on the 23rd.
Well, just in full disclosure, I have made this my concern known quite ahead of time, so I just want to say that.
But, just because it seems to be so closely divided, otherwise I just say let's decide now, and it seems like, some folks want some additional information. Just because it doesn't seem like there's a strong consensus one way or the other, that's why. Otherwise, I just say let's decide it tonight. But, is that fair? John?
I think you go ahead and, do y'all need more information?
I
I don't wanna make them do something if you don't actually need it.
I was thinking, my questions were more in terms of maybe that might provide more guidance to you guys. Because I have my own feelings about whether certain of these responsibilities could be performed on a contracted basis. But maybe that would help to have real case examples of whether or not they could be. But, I don't have tonight, or
In my own personal experience, being in the military, we have contractors, and they handle very sensitive information, so I don't understand why a contractor wouldn't be able to do the tasks that you need.
And again, if the position is absolutely required and needed, we have next year's budget cycle, just right around the corner, having that staff member. And again, like I keep saying, at least we can say we've done our due diligence on this.
Well, all right, so sort of what I'm hearing is I feel like some of us feel like we could make a decision tonight. Jason wants more information for you all's edification, but you're saying that might not make a difference. if somebody wants to call, well, how about this? If somebody wants to call the question, we can call the question and hash it out tonight, and move forward.
What do we need to do?
Well, let me ask you this, there's not an agenda item to consider ordinance, you were planning on bringing the ordinance to the June meeting, is that for vote?
To the June meeting, yes.
Yeah, it has to be public hearing, this hasn't been advertised as a proven about.
All right, then, then we're sort of stuck with, the two, we did this last year, I think, where we had two proposed budgets based on what we decided with something. It was either A or B. So if this has to be done when there's a hearing, then I guess it wouldn't hurt to, do you all think, do you need any information for your own purposes, or is it for their purposes? And they're saying they don't need any more
I
information.
just feel like if we all kind of are in agreement that the demand for planning and zoning, whether it's permitting for new homes or what have you, is going to slow, let's say, over the next 5 years. I would also guess that we probably have at least one retirement in the planning department. To your point, whether we replace that person or not will be up to, your staff and council, but, I just kind of, I err on the side in this case, not always, but in this case on staff's recommendation that they really need to fill this position with a permanent employee. And I think that there are certain client-facing, customer-facing responsibilities that just, in my own personal opinion, I don't know that you're going to get that level of service with a contracted employee. My 2 cents.
Or the consistency, potentially. But
So,
I also understand why you're saying that.
Yeah.
I get both sides that I'm fighting my own self, but I get it. But I also feel like if staff recommends it, I can't argue that.
okay,
But I
so
am new, so.
where does that leave us then?
That leaves us with him bringing it back June 3rd for a vote.
Okay.
So this is it. You just told us about it. We're moving on. We'll just vote it in June and
I bring it back on, the workshop. So I'll know how I
But
create the budget.
for the vote, it'll be on June 3rd.
All right, so if we're going to bring it back at the workshop, if we could have that additional information, I think that would be helpful for the discussion.
Fair enough. Sounds good.
so we're bringing it back to discuss it. One last thing.
All right, very good. That was a good discussion. Up again on May 23rd. Moving right along then, we next have item C8, NCDOT easement acquisitions for the Highway 74 bridge replacement project. Miles.
Yes, this is, 2 easement acquisitions for NCDOT's bridge widening project. Parks and I, the city attorney and I met with, the property acquisition agent, Tony Adams, with Carolina Land Acquisition, just recently, and he's provided, the information to us. The initial offer for tip parcel U 6143-011, the initial offer is $35,375. And of course, city attorney and I, kind of discussed the areas. There's, construction, easement that they need, there's drainage easement that they need, then there's the right of way that they need. And so, city attorney and I spoke with him and kind of went back and forth as far as like the amount that we could counter. Of course, this is very similar to the first easement acquisition that they offered, that the council approved a couple of months back. And, he said that, typical range is 25% greater. We made an offer greater than the 25% range. He went back to NCDOT and, said for that particular offer was accepted at $50,000. In very similar fashion, to that easement, was also tip parcel U 6143-009. And it was on the other side of Catawba Street, and actually have these pulled up on the actual maps. On $16,200, for that one. Parks and I, negotiated it, and they came back with an accepted offer at $25,000. I also included inside your council packets their offer letters and then some of their right-of-way claim form reports and then the maps associated with it, for both, parcels. If you all would like me to stand up and kind of show you on the screens if you're interested, or if you want to ask any questions, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, any questions about these?
I would say that our city manager and city attorney are good negotiators.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
Absolutely. What was the total amount with everything negotiated?
$75,000 for just these two, and then the first easement was $92,925.
We shall have them up quite a bit from that one too.
I don't think it was quite as much in terms of percentage wise.
But dollar-wise, it came.
Yes, yes.
I don't.
Anyone? There they are on the screen if you want to take a look. But otherwise, I guess the motion would be a motion to approve.
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve these acquisitions, or these contracts made by Alex, seconded by Catherine. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, they pass. Thank you. And that brings us finally to C9, quarterly finance update. And so, Jared, if you would please.
And just real quick, not to go back, but I'm thinking about the baby. What if you can't get the next workshop?
Well, then it doesn't matter what my vote is.
Oh.
But my position is not going to change.
Fair, okay, so you can't, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, why we still had to like we couldn't vote on it, that's why I said that.
I would have a very tough time explaining that to my wife with the hospital.
You better not.
No, I might.
Oh my God.
Come flying on two wheels. Thanks for sticking around, Jared.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council.
Jared.
Good night.
Sorry. You good?
There was a mix in somebody doing something with a PowerPoint meeting. It overrode. Don't. So, here's yours. It comes up.
Okay.
Give it a second.
You know what's my bar, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got my notes, I can just roll through it, but I want to have my slides.
No signal. Check the external input or select another input using the input button.
Approved.
Just start talking. I'll get it.
Okay. Well, overall, general fund revenue, we'll start with revenue. General fund revenue has been strong in fiscal year '24. Through March 31st, the city has collected 20% over what was budgeted in property taxes and has collected $900,000 over what was entirely budgeted through the entire fiscal year. So really strong health there for the general fund. Sales tax has continued to come in strong. Distributions in January, February alone were $508,000 and $402,000 respectively. And in order to meet our budget projections for sales tax, we needed to bring in roughly $373,000 a month in sales tax. And we're currently averaging $444,000 a month, so on really good track there. And for the last quarter, we need to average $230,000 a month to meet budget.
And just to be clear, the delta in that excess there, which is great, is that people are actually paying and they're not disputing it.
That's correct. Historically, our collection percentage has been 99% on property taxes.
And during one of the last budget cycles, we were a little bit more conservative on collection because of the increase.
Yep, so that was actually this budget year. We budgeted 10% appeals, which actually came in at 1%, so you have that metric, along with we budgeted a 97% collection rate. It's coming in at 98, 99%.
Good job.
Yep. That's all I have on general fund revenue. Any questions there? Okay. Water sewer fund revenue is right in line with the budget. The non-recurring revenue you see there is the fund balance appropriation that we use to balance the budget this year. So far, we've not had to tap into that. That's why you only see a small number there, but we'll see how this year shakes out. The water sewer in general revenues are in line with expenses. We look pretty fair there, and you'll see that on the next, well, would see that on the slide in your handout. The $600,000 fund balance appropriation there is for that River Mist reimbursement back in September of 2023. The other budget amendment will be reflected in the fourth quarter update because that was approved at last month's meeting. Any questions on water sewer revenue? Okay. And stormwater fee revenue is coming in as anticipated, no concerns there. Okay. Next, any questions on any revenue sources? Next, we'll look at expenses. In the general fund, as a percentage of the year, most departments are in good shape. My internal metric that I use when I create this variance report is anything plus or minus 5%. I try to investigate, take a look at and see what's going on. The two that popped out here are admin and fire. Just a few percentage points off of my internal barometer. I'm not concerned there. I'm going to monitor these budgets throughout the last quarter. If any budget amendments or transfers are needed, I will take that into consideration, present a budget amendment if needed. Debt service is down as a percentage of the year, but keep in mind we do have the large loan payment for the rec center coming up at the end of the fiscal year. Planning is under budget as a percentage of the year, but we are going to be using money for that comprehensive land use plan in the fourth quarter of this fiscal year. Any questions on general fund expenditures?
I guess, would you consider economic development an outlier?
It is, but that is due to a one-time, so we pay U.S. Cotton and Belmont Industrial. It's a part of a grant proceed program, and we incurred a large expenditure to Belmont Industrial in March. So no concern there. There's not going to be anything really hitting that budget for the rest of the year.
Okay.
When does that roll off, Jerry?
I'd have to take a look. We're pretty close again.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I read somewhere that maybe one more year, maybe even this year.
5 year, I think it's next year.
Next year's the last one, I think.
And we put that in our forecast, right? Like, because then that's what, 200 or however much it is, it's no longer going to be in.
As far as the capital model?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool.
Good. We'll get into water sewer. No real concerns here. The big one is the capital, but again, that's that $600,000 River Mist reimbursement. That's going to flatten out as we approach the end of the year. No concerns there. Debt service, we do have approximately $262,000 coming up here over the fourth quarter. So you'll see that percentage dip a little bit as well as far as it being under budget. So in general, revenue, if you look at if you take a flip back to the revenue side on water sewer, you'll see we've collected $7.2 million, expended $7 million. So in general, this year, we're basically in balance in the water sewer fund. Any questions on water sewer? Stormwater fund is in good shape, under budget as a percentage of the year. We did incur that large expense due to the budget amendment for the street sweeper that you guys approved. Other than that, stormwater is in good shape. Any questions there? Now, these are the three major funds. We also have other project funds, capital reserve, things like that, but these are the major funds that you guys budget for year to year. Any other questions on any expenditures? Okay, and then I did want to put in a prior year revenue comparison and expense comparison from last year, just so that you guys could look. As you can see, as a percentage of in general fund, we're in really good shape compared to last year. We're already collecting more than what we budgeted. That negative there is basically credit over budget, so don't let the negative in parentheses worry there. That's actually $908,000 that's come in over what we budgeted on the revenue side. And as you can see, water and sewer fund and stormwater fund are relatively similar to last year. I also did the same thing on the expense side. The only difference is the stormwater fund, and again, that's due to the large expense with the street sweeper that we just appropriated.
unfortunately not appear to be any reports. So that leads us to everyone's favorite section of the agenda, other business. I'll start with Jason.
Few items, I'll go through these kind of quickly, I know we've been here a while. First off, thanks very much to the staff who planned the staff appreciation luncheon last week. Very much enjoyed being able to hang out and spend some time with our folks to keep our operations rolling smoothly. I thought it was great that we got to recognize them. Also want to thank Assistant Chief Pullen for helping us out with Harris Teeter and some of the tenants there that have been saying that some of the raucous kids have been kind of getting amped up a bit with the end of school approaching. So thanks for keeping tabs on those special checks that you guys are running there in the afternoons especially. Also wanted to commend KBB Keep Home Beautiful for their work in the citywide cleanup and all the helpful volunteers that came out with us to help pick up trash and other debris along the roadways and parks. A couple of veterans had asked me about our Veterans Day celebration or activities that we have in November each year, and I can't recall, I think I was maybe out of town last November when we had Veterans Day activities, but they seem to recall a time when we had activities around the Fighting Yank statue downtown. Maybe they brought some bleachers in for some activities. I don't know if you recall.
Bobby Brown used to do something with that group a long time.
Yeah.
Like I was in high school and they would have like events or something.
Because I guess more recently it's been something maybe the American Legion, but generally there's, yeah, I think we would get a bigger draw if we, if we're planning any specific activities on that day or that weekend,
You might want to ask, I don't know, Cassie, I know we've had discussions in the Main Street meetings about potential additional Veterans Day activities.
Susan
Martello.
Susan is, and she brought up at one time to try to bring back a parade or something like that.
Yeah.
That they had done years ago.
Are we still debating that, or what do we can, sorry, but perhaps your question can be answered now.
To your point, Susan is doing something.
Yeah.
I don't know what, but she's doing something.
Yeah.
Yes, Susan, that you had a discussion about the Keener
Yeah.
Boulevard,
Yeah.
is planning an event Sunday, November 3rd. While not a parade, she wants to plan something to take place in Stoke Park. She's already been in contact with a lot of military affiliated groups to be a part of that and is very excited about how much traction she's gaining.
Okay.
So that is 100% on our radar.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. And then the last thing I had, Miles, we talked about this before, but I asked Tiffany about the 4 lots that are being developed on the corner of Julia and South Point Road. I know we've got that scheduled for resurfacing, and we talked about kind of delaying that until we get, maybe the concrete trucks and the heavy trucks traffic, out of there so they're not coming in on new pavement. I don't know if we can get any kind of idea of when they may be doing that, because Julia Avenue just continues to deteriorate, but it looks like they're getting closer because they're, throwing down gravel and looks like they're getting ready maybe to pour some footers there, but that is the plan, right, is that we're gonna let them get through that phase before we put down new pavement?
I think initially we were gonna just wait till they had the taps in.
Is
I think they have the taps in, is that correct, Jonathan? For the lots right there on Julia Avenue and South Point Road, water sewer.
Yes, I believe they're finishing up the sewer taps.
But as far as the contractor schedule for like pouring driveways and footers and all that kind of stuff, I have.
That would make sense, right? I mean, you don't want to put down your asphalt right there and have. There's something to be mindful of. That's all I have.
The only thing that I have is, I had a couple of people reach out to me. I feel like I'm always talking about another business, the turn and signal light at RL Stowe. I'm gonna keep bringing it up until it's taken care of.
We've got that in front of, the DOT.
Perfect, but also, and I've experienced it, maybe you guys have too, but the lights are not in sync from Chick-fil-A past Belmont Middle. And what's happening is we're bottlenecking, and it's going way past First Methodist Church, past Julia. So I don't know if that's something we could revisit and see if we can get in sync.
That's a good one. So, glad you brought that up. So, that light right there at Chick-fil-A, they turn into South Point right there for drop-off. So in the afternoon, is there a way, have we tried this where just turn that light into one of those flashing yellows where traffic can keep moving through in the afternoons.
The problem is the people coming out, you're right on that side, and that was in I remember because that was in the traffic engineer's report, but, that side you don't need to worry about in the afternoon, but it's the same light that the people coming up out of the mall, there are people on the other side of that. So like, yeah, this side, but there are people coming up.
Those people would have another way to get out. Like they could go the other way down RL or they could go on down to the Pinso entry exit point. Because you're right, that bottlenecks right there in the afternoon are really bad, and it backs traffic up all
Well,
the
what's
way.
happened at the light at South Point and RL Stowe is red, and then you've got the other one is green, and then you've got the other one, it's red, and so you literally are stop, go, stop, and there's so much traffic, because we're so, it's the time and two of the day, but it also is in the middle of the day, if you pay attention to it, they're not in sync.
I think we just need to add, Miles, that to our list of, I know they're already looking at the signals, at the dedicated left turn there from South Point to RL Stowe. They're already looking at that, there's things unfortunately just move at snail's pace, but they are looking at that already. But the synchronization of the three lights there, three signals, maybe.
Here comes Chief Paul.
I just want to add something, if you don't mind.
Yep, sure.
So we're actually in the process of training a crossing guard for that location. So I really wouldn't advise you at this point until we can get that underway and see what that's like to turn that into a blinking red light. I don't know that DOT would allow that anyway for liability reasons. But if that light's blinking, then traffic's going to go faster, which is good. But it's not going to be good on our end when we have a crossing guard there. It's taken us a year and a half to get. So just to enlighten you about
That's
that.
good. Now, so they're would be at the red, what is?
They're going to be at that red light right there.
Red Raider Way, I think it's called.
Yes, that's Chick-fil-A.
Isn't that the position we tried to hire?
Yeah, for a year and a half now.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure you got me.
Yeah.
We also look at coming out of Chick-fil-A right there, making it a right turn only during certain times. So you wouldn't have to go across the traffic if you're trying to go left.
Well, I'm thinking people end up going to Andy.
Yeah, they would, but it would filter you for time. Lose some of that congestion.
I think those lights get in sync would be all right.
I think
It's always gonna be a topic of discussion.
they're not gonna come
right
on,
there.
that crossing guard would come online next school year, obviously, in August. Sorry.
Yeah, I got to talk to you all night.
I know.
Where are you going?
All right, now what was the question? I didn't hear it.
So that person obviously is not gonna come on board until August, next school year, right?
No, we've actually hired him. We've hired him, now. But I mean, he
For
won't
these last few
be,
weeks
he
of
won't be
school.
work, he'll have that position, but it won't pick back up in fuel. He
Yeah.
won't be paying him anything, because he won't be working.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless
We'll let the
between
little
now
college.
and the end of the school year, he actually goes out there.
But I think what you're saying is that would help with the safety of the kids, especially crossing the streets, but in terms of the synchronization with the signals, that probably still needs to happen, but not before we
Yes.
get some coordination.
He was
there.
just saying, don't turn,
Yeah.
when Charlie mentioned, why don't we just do it
Right.
into
We
a
can
yield?
definitely,
Not
sorry,
yield,
we
but
can
yield.
definitely bring that up
Yeah.
with our DOT meetings. But I don't know that that's gonna be an option for them. I don't know, I can't speak for them. But for us, we don't want the traffic to go any faster than it is. I know that stinks from a perspective of everyone else, but if I have a crossing guard there that, I like the traffic to stay as minimal as I can. It's a choke point. It's been looked at for the last couple of years, several different times by several different people.
So just when people ask about that, this crossing guard, once they are, working out there, they're gonna be there from what, 3 to 4, maybe in the afternoons?
They're usually there from about 7:15 to 8:15.
Right, in the morning shift.
8:30, and then in the afternoon, the same thing, about an hour. It's an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon.
Right, and then I think a lot of the issues that Catherine's referring to, we see between like 4 and 6.
Yeah.
So I think we'll bring it up in the next meeting, but I think there's still a synchronization issue there that we gotta,
Definitely.
but just in coordination with you guys.
Thanks.
That's all I got.
Friday Night Live, I wasn't able to make it, had my sister's rehearsal dinner, but I heard great things, even though it rained. Appreciate everyone volunteering, police, first responders, everybody out there. This is an, sorry, oh, I thought you said something. The development signs that we bring in, or that we put up, or the applicant puts up for a future development, and I've noticed this a few times, and a couple residents have brought this up to me. We sometimes will put them parallel to the road, so where you would almost have to stop to look at it as opposed to driving by and reading it in certain areas. Del Webb is for one. There's a couple on East Catawba Street for the Carstarfins. Curious if we could not just reposition them the other way, so when people are driving by, they can kind of see.
Like perpendicular to the street.
Exactly. Just a call out there. I got this call right before I got here from a citizen. So the gates, I don't know what the proper term of it is, but it's the road gates, or the road blocking gates that have been on Main Street. I guess there was an event, I think there was like a 5K or something that was supposed to happen, but they were left on Main Street. And we actually had a resident, an older gentleman, fall and trip over one. And then later that afternoon was sent to the hospital for something I don't know. I just got this message, so we might want to try to make sure we're moving them as far aside of the road and sidewalks as possible, so that we're not causing anything, and even removing them as soon as we can. Because the lady, and again, whether right or wrong, she said this is the longest she's seen these gates, and I don't know, it's those orange.
The barricades.
The barricades, the longest she's seen them out in a particular area, so I just want to call that out. And other than that, I don't have anything else, Jim.
Just a couple things. I know there was some concern a few months ago about deposits to the employee 401k plan. And I thought that had been, it was an issue with I forget who the company was, but they weren't able to accept our uploads or something like that. Has that been rectified? Have we verified that people are getting their deposits into their 401k?
Yeah, it was an issue with, so we had Prudential, Empower bought out Prudential, I believe. And then they had an issue with like the upload into the account of the Empower account. And so we had contacted our 401k rep to help us out with the issue. And that took a period of time. To my knowledge, employees should be all squared away with 401k unless I'm out of the loop on that. So that was probably 2 months, I think we resolved that.
February, March.
Yeah, February, March, we resolved it. That was not an issue on the city of Belmont's end. That was an issue on Empower's end where we could not load our information into them.
How long did that take place?
How long did it take place?
Yeah. Was it just a one time?
No, it was a couple of months where.
It was about 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
4 to 6 weeks, yeah.
4 to 6 weeks. And so, the entire time we were contacting our 401k rep to make sure that the issue's been resolved. And so it took us a little bit of time to get that resolved.
Okay, so you might want to maybe just confirm that.
Are you still getting?
Well, it's not me personally, but I
employees
might not be getting them, yeah. So, you might just want to look at that.
I'll look into it.
The only other thing is we made oblique references to the update of the comprehensive land use plan throughout this meeting, but as we all have at our desks here, we have like a magnet and a little notebook and a card even. So if we want to promote that, they have a website, ourbelmont.org, and it's open for comments and business, and we're going to get started on that effort and start with the public engagement process. So there. Thank you everyone for pitching in and stepping up in the mayor's absence, and I obviously concur with Alex. Prayers for a speedy recovery, and hopefully he'll be back with us soon.
Well, sorry, Jim. Thanks to you for setting that.
Yeah,
These meetings have gone very well, so we haven't missed a beat on these, so good job to you, Jen.
And following up to this weekend.
Well, we all are stepping up in these circumstances. If there is nothing else, yes. Miles sent, just one more thing.
All right, I'll take it back, Jen.
Miles sent us an email Friday night, along with our weekly update about the potential projects to be discussed in conjunction with the lobbyist for our upcoming trip. And he asked us if we had any changes or additions to speak so that the lobbyists can finalize the packet that will be, I shouldn't say packet, the
Flyer, package.
yeah. So I know we're probably all getting ready for this meeting, but if we could get any changes to Miles tomorrow
Yes.
by close of business, so that we can get that ready for the trip to Raleigh, that would be appreciated. All right, that was truly it.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn made by Alex, seconded by Charlie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? If there not be, motion adjourned.